It has always been believed that the world is ruled by three types of people: the talented, the rich, and other types of people who, according to people, are very rare. There had already been a fierce battle going on for hours between the giant two-headed dragon and the desperate mages who couldn't let the monster overpower them, or the rest of the humans would be threatened. They used various spells, but the dragon's armor was too strong and they couldn't hurt it. They didn't give up trying to kill it, but they also had to fight off its attacks. A girl appeared on the mountain singing loudly, which attracted the dragon's attention. She realized he would attack her and activated her skill, Rectal of the Gods. After applying this skill, the girl had two very bright angel wings. She was preparing to use a random skill to finish off the monster. The third type of people who ruled the world were people blessed with luck. A girl saw her attacked by a dragon. Still, she had the skill Nikki, Goddess of Victory Heavenly Punishment, which stopped the dragon by piercing one of its heads. Now, the other mages were left to wield another head that attacked them even more fiercely. One of them decided to use her most potent summoning spell to finish the ruthless monster. She knew that this spell would kill the second head and end the battle, so she summoned a fire dragon creature and directed all of its power at the monster. The dragon's flames were so powerful that the monster's head melted. It was finished, and the humans took over. Nothing threatened them now. The people rejoiced in victory. Thanks to their coordinated work, the two-headed dragon, the lord of the dungeon, was defeated. They did not hold back their emotions. This victory was not easy for them. The young lad had completed the Abyss Guild raid on the two-headed dragon entry and was preparing to quit the game. His mission was complete, and they were able to defeat the bloodthirsty monster. After leaving the game, someone called him. The conversation was unpleasant for him, and after a while, he began to freak out. He was offered only $300 a day, but it was not enough for him. He realized that one day, he could not return from the raid. But he was told that no one was forcing him to play, and that there was no shortage of young men eager to do what was right. Hen replied that he wasn't refusing, he was just asking to raise the price for his labor. The answer was simple for him. They told him that they couldn't help him. They were just brokers. They offered the price that the guild itself had set and hung up. Now he had to decide for himself whether to work for that kind of money or not. After this answer, Hen got even more angry and started shouting at the whole club. The administrator heard the shouting and came in to ask if he was okay. Hen calmed down and apologized for making noise. Hen was upset and went to the exit. He said that he would have to work as cannon fodder for a month. The administrator smiled and said that he would like to be on a raid like this at least once. They were walking between the game pods and talking. The administrator said that out of 1.8 billion people, less than 15 million God Wars players could make some sort of living in raids. He smiled at Hen and asked him not to despair. Unlike others, he was not without talent. The receptionist tried his best to support Hen, who was quite upset about the call. Hen thought about his words. If he thought about it that way, he was right. He had talents in this game. Unlike other games, God Wars didn't have an auto-aim, and you had to hit the target yourself. This disadvantage was his big advantage in the game. Thanks to his background as a baseball player, he could accurately hit monsters without auto-aiming. Hen recalled that he had to forget about a career in baseball after he suffered an injury that ended his dreams of being a pretty famous pitcher. Remembering Hyukju's words and realizing that he would never know how humiliating such compliments about talent sounded to him, Hen decided to pretend that he was pleased by his words. Hyayeon gave him the card and wished him luck with the character's romp. Hyukju replied that he doubted he would have succeeded and explained that his predecessors had taken over everything. Still, unfortunately, with that, nothing could be faked. Hyukju looked at him and realized that he was still a long way off. Hen had already spent 5 years training his Midas character, invested a lot of money in him, and could participate in raids. The administrator remembered that Hen had gotten this character when he had gotten stupid and invested all his savings into the Gacha class card, and then Midas had fallen to him. When Hen heard about it, his mood had gotten even worse. He still regretted it. But this was his only chance to make more money. He needed a new character to bring him a steady income. Hen knew he needed to provide for his family. Every penny mattered. Hyukju gave him back the card, which Hen immediately hid. He noticed that Hyuk was reading and wondered what it was. Hyuk said he had been drawn into reading a fantasy novel and briefly told him the story. Hen listened to the receptionist about his novel. The plot seemed strange to him, but he did not delay any longer and left, wishing him a good shift. Heck, I noticed that it was raining outside. He was surprised that Hen went outside without an umbrella. He was walking home and thinking about Heck's story about the novel. He thought the plot was strange because time travel was used to exact revenge on no one, and he thought it was foolish. Hen thought this affair was nonsense and that if he could return in time, he'd better invest successfully in stocks. Hen was so involved in his thoughts that he didn't notice the car bearing down on him. The driver swerved at the last moment and did not hit him. He had an accident and the car overturned. Passers-by ran up to him and asked how he was feeling, but they also tried to help the driver, with whom it is unknown what happened. Hen looked at the overturned car and thought he had almost died. A few more seconds, and he would have just been swept away by the car. He was lucky the driver had time to react and swerve into the pole. He thought luck wasn't really his thing, but he felt that if he survived now, it was luck. Hen didn't realize the accident had broken the electric pole, which was already falling behind him. The pole fell, and the wires caught Hen, and he collapsed. He lay there thinking that his whole life had been a miserable existence. No money, no talent, but he could swear that that day, as strange as it sounded, luck had smiled on him for the first time in his entire life. In 2034, the long-awaited VR game, God Wars, was released, which everyone was waiting for and raving about. Many people liked it and wanted to start playing it as soon as possible, not sparing their money. Its name was translated as War of the Gods, and just a few years after its release, the game hugely impacted sports, entertainment, and culture. Once, the number of users of this game exceeded 1.8 billion people. Few people now live on the income from their work in God Wars, which allowed them to earn a decent income, but it was not given to everyone. Hen lay unconscious, but suddenly, he distinctly heard his name. Slowly, he began to regain consciousness, and the first thing he wanted to know was where he was and who was speaking to him. He regained consciousness and saw a doctor in front of him who said he had a first-degree burn and that he was discharging him. He said he could go home when he would have paid the bill at the front desk. Hen was shocked that he had already been provided with a bill. Hen didn't consider himself lucky. He was able to dodge the machine, but he was still electrocuted and had to empty his already meager savings because of it. He lifted his head and looked up at the sky. Hen thought he should probably be grateful. All he had in this fucked up world was his body, and he didn't want to lose it. Hen walked down the street for a bit and decided to head home. As he approached the door, he hoped his older brother and Heron were right. They were his only family. He put his hand up to enter the apartment. His biometric data were not registered in this house, and he did not understand how it was possible. Just yesterday, everything was working, and he could enter his home. Hen tried again, but it didn't work. His fingerprints didn't match, and he became furious about it. He dreamed of moving out of this hole, but didn't have enough money for that. Then suddenly, a door opened in front of him, and a little girl stood there. She looked at him and was glad her uncle had come home. He said hello and asked her how she had behaved that day, to which the girl replied that she had been a smart girl. They were both happy to see each other. He asked her where her daddy was. To this question, he heard the answer at his back. He turned around and saw Jun's brother, who was confined to a wheelchair. He was glad that Hen had come home. Jun told him that he had gotten a call saying he was in the hospital. He was wondering what had happened to him, to which Hen replied that it was no big deal. He had all but fallen a little. His brother was very worried about him and wanted to know for sure that he was okay. Hen calmed him down and told him that he wouldn't have been able to come if something was serious. He said it was like their ID was broken. When he told his brother that he couldn't get into the house because he wasn't registered there, his brother replied that couldn't be the case. The Hen was sure the lock was just broken because the house was old, but his brother said that if it was broken, it wouldn't work at all, but it did, which meant that the system was giving him that answer. Because the system used the same biometric algorithm as God Wars capsules, the lock was functional. Apparently, the problem was with his game account. Hearing those words, Hen was shocked. He couldn't believe it. Hen started to sweat a lot from nerves and decided to check with his brother again to see if the ID used was the same ID that God Wars used. His brother replied that he got it right, but he was surprised that he didn't know that. He looked at his brother and said that he needed to leave for the capsule cafe right away. He realized that he needed to check his data. He couldn't lose his earnings from this game. Hen ran to the cafe and started to enter his data, but again there was an error. He called support and asked why he was denied access because of some biometrics mismatch. He was not a hacker. He was just a normal Hen Wu. Customer service recommended hiring a lawyer, which made Hen angry. He started demanding access to the account, but he didn't have time to say anything more. They hung up on him when he started raising his voice at them. Hen sat down on the couch and thought that biometrics were impossible to fake, so in their time, they were the only reliable way of identification. He couldn't believe the years spent playing the game had been wasted. He sat holding his head and wondering why his data was no longer being recognized. He only had this question, and he didn't know who to ask for help or who could tell him what to do next. Hen remembered that everything had been fine until yesterday, but suddenly he remembered the car running at him and how he had been electrocuted. Maybe that was the reason. He couldn't believe it was all from the electrocution. He decided to try logging into his account again, but it was in vain. He didn't understand why this was happening now when he had enough problems. Hen thought that now he was going to be finished. After all, he had spent so much money on pumping up his character that he had no money to create a new one. He needed to feed his family. He thought more and more that he was finished. This game was their only source of income, without which it would be hard for them to survive. He feared that his story could repeat itself. After a while, Hen pulled himself together. He thought he shouldn't have given up, but he realized that stopping playing God Wars was not an option. He needed to try starting over. He got up and decided to go to the club. He thought he had to forget about his dream of getting any rank at all. He decided to be a simple miner in the mines. It was his only way out. Hen knew that if he worked hard, he would have enough to live on. He kept thinking about his family, which he played for and never gave up on. He needed money and asked Heck Ju to set up a capsule for him so that he could try playing and earning again. Now, he didn't have any money to boost his character. Hen climbed into the pod and waited for it to start. He thought he was lucky to have a card to create a new hero. The receptionist told him he was connecting him to the game and to get ready. He thought he had to do it all over again. He entered the name of the player he had before and thought that if he didn't have the money, he wouldn't be able to play this game. The game required an investment. The game asked him if he would spend a card to create a character that could only be used once. Hen confirmed his action. He was very worried because the cost of one character was $880. Such a price was because there was a demand for a beautiful life that people lacked in real life. A game could make them anything they wanted and could just as easily allow them to get rich off of it. So Hen set about creating a hero. Hen thought he would hunt hard and try to increase his level. He thought it would be easy enough to sell the items he got, and then the system offered him the option to choose the god he wanted to worship. He realized it was all simple in words, but in reality, he hadn't even put in enough effort last time, and now he had to do it all over again. Cards appeared in front of them. He looked at them and thought that it was a random selection of cards from the first mission. He had spent so much money to get one mage, and it was really upsetting him. He knew that there were only two ways to win at random games. The first was to be born into a wealthy family, which he didn't have, and the second was to have unreal luck and fortune. He believed he had neither. On the cards were many variations of who his hero could be, and Hen thought that he had made this gotcha so many times before that he thought he could guess the contents of any card. He was sure he would have gotten a worthless variant this time too. He held out his hand to the map, thinking that it didn't matter what class he chose. He was going to be a simple miner, and he didn't expect to be much more than that. But suddenly he got a card. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was an Archmage's card. Hen didn't even immediately realize what it was. He was in a stupor of surprise. Hen thought he was hallucinating. The system notification told him that the Dragon of War had accepted him into his army, and that he was an 82 warrior. The system also confirmed that his class was Archmage. He looked around to where two guys were picking cards the same way. One of them was nervous because he'd gotten the warrior class for the third time in a row. He was literally crying that he'd never once gotten the Archmage he wanted. His friend wanted to reassure him and said it was only a dream because legendary classes like the Archmage were exclusively reserved for wealthy players like Asmo, who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the game. If all of this was true, Hen would have no use for mining now, so he decided to change his strategy. He wanted to pump as fast as possible and go on a raid. But it wasn't as he thought. The system offered him to start a training quest. and he agreed because he thought his class was a temporary system error. Hen confirmed that he had completed the quest and was immediately given a new task. Still, he thought that when he logged out and logged back in, he would have some other class, like mage or warrior, which were less important than Archmage. He thought he had pulled an incredibly priced card and had some changes he hadn't had before. He could now see the hidden text above the quest description. Hen noticed that completing the quest could earn one the rank of Master Trainer. He couldn't believe this was hidden in a quest that no one cared about. This rank could be obtained if one survived for 71 minutes. He grabbed his head when he saw that he was given plus 10 points to all of his stats, while normally only 5 points were given for leveling up. His two friends couldn't understand what was happening to him. They thought he was blocked, too. Hen thought that he had been playing for 5 years and had never heard of this. No forum had written about this quest, but it wasn't surprising. After all, you had to last 71 minutes, but even a curious player wouldn't want to sit in a capsule for 70 minutes. He realized that he wouldn't get the Archmage class by accident if he saw the hidden text in the quests. The system alerted him that the fourth wall was starting to break, and Hen decided to turn on the game recording so he could have video replays. Hen knew that in God Wars, you could only achieve a suitable class with massive money or sheer luck. People could pay very generously to bypass the system and get a higher class. He strongly hoped it wasn't all a dream. He was insanely happy that he had such a class. It was his chance to earn enough money and provide for his family for a long time. When the task started, he faced strong opponents. He couldn't understand how they could defeat such opponents right away, but the other players tried to calm him down by saying that they didn't need to defeat them. Hen asked again. They definitely didn't need to kill these monsters. He thought it was impossible for level 1, and he realized that surviving in this place for 71 minutes wouldn't be as easy as he assumed. He looked at the monsters and noticed the aggression indicator above their heads. He was shocked. He had never been able to do this before, but now it was much easier for him to complete this task. Hen remembered that in their time, your social status depended on your status in God Wars. Each player started the game with their own dreams and goals. But soon, all players came to the same conclusion that God Wars was insanely complex and challenging to play. Some thought it was a waste of money. The moment of truth came when a new player faced reality contained in a training mission when inexperienced players died at the hands of monsters. Hen knew that the tutorial would only end when a player was beaten to death by a monster. The players were running away from them in panic, and they didn't know what to do or how to escape the monsters. He didn't understand why the newcomers were panicking so much, so he told them that they just needed to die quickly to start the main quest. He saw them as experienced players. Hen was running away from them and noticed unusual information for himself. He could even see the monsters' stat windows, where he could learn all the information he needed and their basic techniques in battle. He hid from them and watched their behavior. When the monsters lost sight of him, the indicator above their heads changed color, and Hen understood how the aggression indicator worked. A green indicator meant that the monster was calm and had no intention of attacking it. Still, when it turned red, the beast had seen the target and started attacking it. He managed to dodge their attacks. He thought that years of studying orc behavior could be so useful to him right now when they attacked him. Hen tried to avoid duels with them and just hid from them for 71 minutes. He ran and thought that seeing the enemy's stats and aggro indicator and having 5 years of studying orcs behind him, this should have been an easy task for him. He realized that it wasn't like anyone else knew what he knew. It was to his advantage. After all, he had seen on tape how the orcs were destroying his competitors, and he could safely hide from them. Hen was determined to handle this task. 1 hour left, and the title of Master Trainer would be his. An hour passed, and he was sitting in the capsule holding his head and not knowing what to do. But then abruptly, he began to smile. He knew perfectly well that this was not a dream, that everything that was happening to him was real, and that now he was an Archmage he had never even dreamed of. He turned on the tape to watch his triumph. He managed to last 71 minutes and get the rank of Master Trainer, after which he shamefully died because he was killed by orcs. But he paid it no mind. He had gotten what he wanted, the rank was his, and the Archmage card wasn't a bug in the system like he thought. It was real and belonged to him. Hen remembered that he almost got kicked out of the game for having an elevated heart rate. The game moderators were concerned about the safety of the players, so they introduced a shutdown system for elevated heart rates, so he needed to calm down quickly. He started to breathe deeply, and everything came back to normal. The administrator noticed this and asked him why he was breathing so deeply. He thought something had happened in the game, but Hen didn't even notice as he approached him. Hen decided not to reveal the whole truth and told him he didn't feel good about starting the game again, which wasn't a lie. The administrator smiled and asked him why he was starting over if he already had a mage character. He knew perfectly well that he was not blocked in the game, so he wondered why Hen decided to start over. Hen made a sad face as if he had been blocked and was starting from scratch. The admin realized that this was a sore subject and apologized to him. Hen accepted it even though he knew it was all made up by him. He put on the virtual reality goggles and told him he was heading back to the game. He asked that he not tell anyone about his problem or the blocked player. The Hen couldn't let anyone find out about his secret. If the developers found out about his abilities, they wouldn't leave him alone, and he would be followed everywhere. He didn't want that. He thought that this ability he had gained after yesterday's incident was a gift from heaven. It was his only chance for a better life. He didn't know how long he was allotted to use this ability, but he would make the most of it. When he reached the first city, he looked at his hand and began to squeeze it. He couldn't believe he was an Archmage of legendary rank. There would barely be 100 of them in the entire world. He decided to get pumped up and go raiding. He knew that even if he didn't want to, he needed to go to the Travelers Guild. Hen noticed that a question mark had appeared under the tree and was glowing brightly. He didn't know what it meant, but he assumed it could be the start of some quest. He walked closer and saw, instead of a sign, a small dog lying down and sleeping. He still couldn't figure out why it was glowing. It was still a mystery to him. But then Hen realized what that bright light meant. Such a light could only come from a legendary quest that he had only heard about from rumors. He was shocked that something like that was right in front of his eyes. He figured that completing this one quest would help him cover all of his expenses for the month ahead and provide him with a good income. He could not believe that the whole game was based only on luck, but he liked it. He began to adore this game because, with the help of luck, he could reach incredible heights. He decided to accept the quest first. After reading the quest, he realized that he had never encountered a quest related to revitalizing medicine before. He assumed that this hidden quest was activated when certain conditions were met. Hen bent down to pet the dog and realized that if he hadn't been able to view hidden information, he would have just walked past the quest like the other players. He was happy that he had managed to find this golden quest. Now it was only his, and he wasn't going to give it to anyone, nor would he share it with anyone. Hen decided that first, he needed to visit the Explorers Guild, as they were in charge of most of the quests in the area. Before leaving, he asked the dog not to go anywhere and to wait for him. He didn't want to go to the Explorers Guild. He didn't want anything to do with them, but he had no other choice but to go to them. Hen realized that although there was a large variety of quests in God Wars, the higher the rank, the less often one encountered them. And moreover, they could only be completed a limited number of times. Characters were also limited to a certain number of quests they could give in a day. Because of this, people who got quests in advance began to exchange them for in-game currency, and there were those who began to make money from it. The Guild of Travelers, for lack of being able to control all the in-game characters, and for the fact that other players wouldn't sit back quietly, after a bit of thought, decided to head to the first city. Since the first city was where new players could learn the basics, those who once left it could no longer return to it, which meant only one thing. Gradually increasing their strength and establishing themselves in the first city, they began to expand their services in various areas of the game. The guild captured the trust of newcomers by giving them free items at the very beginning of the game. The guild was constantly improving its image by helping with hunting, resource extraction, and other new players. And soon people started showing up who had flattering things to say about the Explorers Guild. This happened despite the developers declaring their unwillingness to interfere in in-game social processes, so the Guild of Travelers simply became a real business. Hen came to them, and near their building, he thought that it was because of these guys that he didn't want to create a new account. He didn't want to cooperate with them, but he had no way out. Inside, it was explained to him that there were 3 courses available. A basic course, in which he could get the quest without waiting too long. An advanced course, in which, in addition to the quest, he could get the service of borrowing items. and an elite course in which he would be assisted until the end of the quest. After telling him about the courses, the guild representative informed him that he could make payment with real currency, in-game gold, or an item. Now the choice was up to him. The representative smiled and asked which course Hen was most interested in. Hen replied that he would prefer to stay with the basic course. He knew that the people who tried to cheat the guild were forcibly exiled to gather the resources needed to create items, so the guild began to provide services in the real world. To be released, one had to surrender one's character. Hen believed that these vermin were deeply entrenched in the game. The representative smiled and handed him a quest list and a document, asking him to take them and head to the specified location. He took the document and went to the specified place, where he was met by another guild representative. He took the document from him and read it carefully. He looked at Hen and was surprised that he was the one who got the quest, Hoyden's errand. Hen asked to be given a moment to confirm the quest. He paid 10 goblin skins for this quest. After that, he was given all the information about the hidden character quests, but he had already decided which one he would take. After scrolling through quite a bit of information, Hen realized that the hidden quest was related to the legendary one. He put no small amount of effort into searching for it, and after some time, he could still find it. Hen realized he needed to cheat a bit to get all the remaining quests, and the guild representative who had taken the document from him could help him with that. He decided that he needed to get the easy hunting quest over with sooner rather than later. He knew that he could deal with goblins without magical skills as his stats were quite high. He had managed to level up for this quest. When Hen finished dealing with the goblins, a system notification informed him that the god he served had noticed his rapid growth and that the Dragon of War was giving him a unique ability only available to him. A lot of cards appeared in front of him, and he thought it was time for beggar players to play gacha. It was a free skill given out every time you leveled up, but good items were quite hard to get. Hen spread out his cards and was sure he was no longer subject to the will of chance, but he was lucky enough to obtain a rare skill. But it was the opposite. 90 out of 100 cards were ordinary, and he sadly thought that it was hard to get rid of his innate luck. He realized that he wouldn't get any unique ranks. Hen pulled himself together and didn't get too upset. He remembered that his past character had at least been lucky enough to drop an attack spell he could use in battles. Opening the card, Hen saw that he had gotten a new skill, Fireball. It was a rare skill, and he thought that all the preparations had been completed, and now he was ready for almost anything. When Hen returned to the guild, he saw the same man on the doorstep who had taken the document from him. He thought it was time to pick up the last hidden quest. He came up to him to greet him. He was surprised that he had managed so quickly. He noted that Hen was quite good, to which Hen modestly replied that he had overestimated him and that he had struggled to defeat even one goblin. The man was alarmed by his words. Looking at him, he thought he was a complete novice, but he wondered why he had gotten through the task so quickly. It looked like he had picked up an extra item somewhere. Hen went to collect his rewards for completing the quest, and the man thought happily that he would soon be another purse for them to enrich their guild. But then, the guild representative's expression changed drastically. He couldn't believe his eyes. He saw that Hen had managed to obtain all the goblin skin. It was unbelievable. The old man noted that Hen was very clever. After looking at what Hen had gotten, he saw that he had gotten the Goblin's Yearning, which fell out with a minimal chance. Hen explained to the old man that he bought 30 goblin skins at once, since no one was selling 10 pieces at once. He thought that he only needed 10 pieces for the quest, and asked the old man for more information about the price. He turned to the old man and said that for some reason, the man had taken all 30 units of goblin skin from him. He didn't understand why he had done that, or how he could get the rest. The man stood there and didn't understand what new quest Hen was talking about, but he went on to say that he wasn't happy about it and that they should have warned him about such a thing beforehand. After all, he had honestly bought this quest from them with money. The frightened man approached him and said that they were very sorry, but could not help him in any way and that no compensation was provided for such a case. He added that everything was described in the contract, and if the client did not read the information well enough, the entire responsibility was on the client himself. Hen was furious. He couldn't believe that there would be no compensation. He asked the representative if this meant he had to deal with the quest on his own, to which the representative replied positively. He turned around and started to walk away, saying to himself that he was unlucky, and that he had just lost 20 units of goblin skin for nothing. As soon as he left, the representative exhaled and thought that he had almost gotten himself into more trouble. Walking away from the guild a bit, Hen smiled and thought that nothing was blocking his path now. He had played out in front of the guild that he was very angry with them. This was part of his plan. Hen remembered how he had come to the guild, describing how it was incredibly hard for him to get a goblin's yearning. In exchange for this item, he received a revitalizing medicine made thanks to him. When the medicine was in his hands, he did not hold back his emotions. He began to cry with happiness. He left the guild and thought that now he would be able to complete his first legendary quest. He went back to the doggy and gave him the cure, hoping he could get a decent reward. Hen thought that this quest could make him a real rich man, but the system notified him that the wolf, who had lost his name, was henceforth loyal to him as his master, and had been given the title of Master Divine Creature. He was very upset. He wanted to trade it for treasure and riches. After calming down a bit, Hen looked at it and thought he didn't realize it was a wolf. From the looks of it, it looked like a normal puppy. Hen took him in his arms and thought that appearance was completely unimportant to him. He strongly hoped that, at least with the statistics, he was doing well, and he would help him in the next quests. The wolf cub looked at him with admiring eyes. He was happy that he had found a master. Hen received a notification from the system that he had to name his pet, and he began to think of a name for him. Hen decided to call him Lucky, and a notification appeared instantly that the nameless wolf had a new name and a new life. Hen got excited and forced him to quit the game. He left the capsule and headed for the exit, where the receptionist said hello to him, but Hen lowered his head and walked silently towards the exit. One of the visitors remarked to him that he didn't say hello back. It wasn't nice of him. But Hyok-ju stood up for him, saying that Hen was depressed because he was locked out of the magician account on which he spent 5 years and all his money. They wondered what he was going to do next because he had already invested all his money in the magician's account and had no other money. They realized that he was in a difficult situation and didn't have time to talk. Hen was in a mood again. He pretended to be depressed so that there would be no questions. He remembered his pet, and now he was sure that he was not mistaken and that the dog was Fenrir. He knew that Fenrir was the strongest divine creature in God Wars and unrivaled in close combat, so he was unrealistically happy to have such a pet. Hen thought that his luck didn't end, and now he also had such a strong companion in the game. However, he was well aware that such a chance only came once in a lifetime. He started to wonder if things would continue like this, but then his thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. He picked up the phone and answered his niece. He said he would bring her some chicken for dinner tonight. But what he heard from his tribeswoman Heron, that her daddy was in trouble, shocked him, and he rushed from the computer club to the hospital as soon as possible, where Heron was already waiting for him. Hen took her in his arms and tried to find out what had happened to her daddy. A nurse came over to them and explained that he had had a heart attack and hypotension, but all the bad stuff was over. There was nothing to worry about now. The nurse added that their relative now had a pacemaker. This device needed to be replaced periodically, and the patient needed rehabilitation. She asked if Hen had a heart problem, and how long ago he had been checked by a cardiologist. Hen replied that he had not been checked by a cardiologist because his heart did not bother him. It was already night outside, but Hen and Heron did not leave the hospital in the hope that his brother would come to his senses. They could not leave him at such a difficult moment. Heron could not stand it and fell asleep right outside her father's room. Hen sat staring out the window, thinking about what he should do, how to cure his brother. They could barely make ends meet. They were going through a difficult time in their lives. Everything was about money, which they didn't have. Now he realized he couldn't delay. He had gotten Fenrir, and now it was time to earn a human so they wouldn't have any more trouble paying their bills. He decided to sell people the game's bugs to make it easier for them to play and mine artifacts to sell them later. And to do that, he needed to pump up his Archmage as soon as possible. Hen was back in the game. Everyone around him was looking at his puppy. They couldn't take their eyes off him. He was charming. Hen looked at him and thought he hadn't paid attention, but he looked like a typical puppy. By completing the legendary quest, he thought he had accomplished 2 things at once. First, he now had a creature that could distract enemies, and second, it freed him from the need to call his partners into battle. He needed to pump up the hero some more, and then he could get out of the first city and advance further. He realized that the next level would be much more difficult, but the rewards would be many times more valuable as well. He also remembered receiving a random skill card from the Dragon of War, which could give him new legendary abilities, thus pumping up the hero. Hen decided to take it slow and open the card he received. He thought it was time to play roulette again, so he confirmed his action in the system notification. He spread out the cards, and now all his doubts evaporated. He had gained a skill of legendary rank, the ability to use telekinesis. It was a very rare skill, but it could only be used by telekinetic mages. Telekinesis allows you to move objects by an invisible force. It can be used in combat to trip or remotely block enemy movement. Hen knew that his Archmage class allowed him to learn any school of magic, so he clicked the card and added telekinesis to his skills. He was glad he didn't have to choose anything. He looked at his pet and thought that everything was going perfectly, working out just how he wanted it to. Hen thought ironically Luck was his wolf, Lucky. After learning a new skill, Hen wanted to try it out as soon as possible in battle, so he and Lucky decided to go hunting in the Goblin Forest, where they could try out his abilities. Running into the forest, they looked around and found 3 goblins sharing prey. They were the perfect targets for a triage, and they attacked them. Lucky caught one of the goblins in the throat, and Hen destroyed the other 2 with his fireball attack. Lucky was happily running around Hen. He looked at him and said that the goblins were too easy, but when the game first came out, to him, they seemed like pretty serious opponents. Hen thought the hunt wasn't hard at all, but he knew it wouldn't always be that way. He decided to go further into the thicket of the forest and survey what was there. He was walking through the forest, and nothing of value came his way, but suddenly, a raven appeared in front of him, and he knew what that meant. He was on a boss raid, and there was less than an hour until the Goblin Champion appeared. The boss raid was a real treasure trove of a game, where you could get an incredible reward for defeating a strong monster. Hen was looking forward to the boss's appearance, and he decided to prepare himself. Hen realized that not all players could go on such a raid because the difficulty was too high. Only strong players could challenge the boss. He thought that such raids were often compared to the starry sky. Everyone could see it, but only a select few were allowed to take possession of it. He had to make a choice: go on such a raid or retreat. But the rewards for the raid were incredible, from the items you could get for the boss to hosting an online broadcast of the fight to show the entire battle process. Hen knew that those who broadcast such fights made a lot of money, and he thought that if he wanted to become a ranker, he would have a lot of work to do. From all these thoughts, Hen decided to distract himself for some time and write to support him. He thought it would be nice to buy Heron something tasty, especially since it cost him only $25. While buying food for his niece, a thought abruptly entered his head. He thought about trying to defeat the boss alone and taking the entire reward for himself alone without sharing it with anyone. He figured there was no one in the county right now. He had already killed all the monsters. He wanted to be, for once, greedy towards others. He had tried his whole life to be a law-abiding man. Hen realized there was no guarantee that his life would be better than it was now. He was tired of enabling others. He realized that now he had a chance and decided to take it. He had rewatched the clips of the raid on the Goblin Champion many times, and he already knew the mechanics of his attacks. He understood how he could counter him. Hen was worried because he had never participated in solo raids before. Still, he could do it right now and go through the raid alone, only with his sidekick Lucky. He was sure he had a good chance of defeating the Goblin Champion. With less than an hour to go before he met him, Hen was determined that he and Lucky would hunt the boss together today. Hen did not waste time and tried to prepare for the fight with the boss. He prepared traps for him, hoping that he would fall into them. They were engrossed in work and did not notice that it was time for the Goblin Champion to appear. When he saw the boss appear in front of him, he didn't waste time talking too much and attacked Hen. He managed to jump back to safety at the last moment, and the boss missed with his attack. As soon as the boss's foot touched the ground, he fell into the pit that Hen had prepared in advance. He also fell into one of his traps. Hen approached the pit and threw a bottle of oil into it. The bottle shattered against the goblin's mask, and he didn't realize what liquid was on it, but that wasn't the whole attack. Wiping his face, the goblin saw Hen throw a fireball at him, and by doing so, he subbed the oil. Hen knew that the Goblin Champion was a boss that changed its fighting style depending on its health level. It was the first serious monster for newcomers who had only fought normal characters before. Digging a hole for the Goblin Champion, Hen thought that a player at a high level, with a vast amount of resources, wouldn't attack him alone, but Hen decided to test his luck and attack him alone. Hen realized that he needed to find a way to disrupt his pattern of attacks. Then, everything else would no longer be a problem. He would be able to overpower him safely on his own. The Goblin Champion tried to climb out of the pit and continue the fight. He was extremely angry that he had been attacked, but Lucky prevented him from climbing out. Lucky bit him on the arm, and the Goblin fell back into the pit. They had done most of the damage to the Goblin, who was on the verge of death. He was furious, sprang out of the Yami, and was already over Hen's head, but he didn't panic. He knew the pattern of his movements would change now. The Goblin was preparing his lightning air attack, which he wanted to use to hit Hen, but he was surprised that Lucky, the wolf, could jump so high and attack him. Lucky bit his neck and fell to the ground. Hen leisurely approached the Goblin Champion. He had a fireball in his hands that was meant to kill him. Now the Goblin was doomed. He wouldn't be able to escape such an attack. He and Lucky defeated it. Hen thought it was easier than he had thought, but he also realized that this monster was only from the first city. It would be much more challenging to compete further away. Hen smiled and said it would be great if he was shown live. Then he could get some good sponsors, and he would already be famous and rich. He realized that he suddenly had a lot of worries. Still, first, he wanted to open the cards that the Dragon of War had given him for his brilliant victory over the Goblin Champion. Suddenly, Lucky noticed something strange, and he barked, thus attracting Hen's attention. He turned around to see what was going on behind them. They saw a red beam, but they didn't realize what it was. Hen saw that in front of them was the Goblin Champion's mask he had gotten after winning. He thought he could sell it, but he didn't know how much he could get from selling it. He decided to leave the game to eat and see how much he could sell the mask for. When he saw the price, he was shocked. He thought raid items were neuropathy expensive. Hen thought it would be nice to put it on himself. Still, he had to think about his brother's rent and medical bills, so he needed money, and selling the mask would allow him to stop thinking about it for a while. He thought that if it wasn't for this situation, he would have left the mask on. Then he heard someone calling him. He picked up the phone and realized it was the insurance company calling him about the electrocution compensation. Hen started to tell me that since that day, he began to feel terrible. He was losing his mind and was traumatized. After which he asked to call them back a little later because he wasn't feeling well right now. After talking to the insurance company, he headed over to the club administrator, Heck Ju, to have him load him up with $300 worth of money in the game, which he could afford now. Ju was surprised that he wanted to spend a lot of money on the game. He thought he had sold some artifacts and wondered where he had gotten such cash from. Not long ago, his account had been blocked and he was out of grief. Hen remembered his conversation with the insurance company, where he said that he was going crazy after the accident and that he had lost sleep. And now he had a fear of poles and cars. He was trying every way to get compensation. The insurance company told him that they would verify the information about his hospitalization, and if it was confirmed, he would be paid. Hearing this, he was overjoyed. He told Hyuk-ju that he had cried, pressed pity, and gotten a solid insurance policy for what had happened to him a few days ago. Hyuk-ju thought it was a mean act on his part and shouldn't have been done that way. Hen was well aware that he shouldn't have done that. But he really needed the money for the month to focus on pumping up his character, and insurance would help him do that. He realized that there was not a moment to lose, so he immersed himself in the game and went to the Goblin Forest again to pump up his hero. Fighting the monsters, he attacked them with fireballs, but the monsters put up a shield, hoping that he would save them. Hen saw that they had put up a shield, but it didn't bother him at all. He had prepared something special for them. He took aim and launched an ice arrow attack at them with his magic wand. He fired, and the arrow pierced through their shield, killing the monster holding it. He noticed it was like a bullet. Magical arrows worked best against monsters that hid behind a shield. Hen continued to attack them with his arrows without engaging them in close combat. There was no need because his arrows hit them with great upset, but he didn't notice the monster climbing up the tree to attack him from behind. Just as the monster approached and was about to attack, Lucky jumped on him and threw the beast off. Hen felt safer when Lucky was around, who would always have his back. Hen and Lucky were already done with these monsters. They had quickly defeated all the orcs and wanted to head to the next level hunting grounds. He realized that he needed bigger opponents. In the Goblin Forest, he managed to get a set of quite rare goblin equipment. The equipment was heavy because it accumulated anger and resentment toward the goblin. Hen realized that he had obtained a lot of valuables, but he noticed that there weren't any unique items among them, like the champion's mask. It didn't give a bonus for a full set. It was like unique items could only be obtained on a raid. Hen stroked his pet and thought it would be great if a unique object would just fall on him from the sky, right into his hands. But he didn't believe that was possible. Suddenly, from behind the bushes ran a guy right at him. He was screaming for help. He was in danger, but Hen did not see who he was running away from. He only saw a guy who was scared to death. But no one came to the guy's aid, and another player killed him with his mace. He was being hunted by several players. They asked if their friend had time to catch up with the fleeing mage, to which he replied that the mage had no chance to escape. The squad gathered around the player's body. They were delighted that he was able to kill him with one hit. They were surprised that mages had so little health and could be killed so easily. They realized that you couldn't play with mages like you could with warriors. The squad had another living mage who began to threaten them, that they wouldn't get away with it so quickly, and that when his guild found out about them, they would be finished. Archer leaned over to him and said he didn't care at all about his threats. He wasn't on his main account right now, and at this level, he wouldn't even be able to contact anyone. He got tired of listening to his threats, and he slapped him as hard as he could. He did it with special pleasure. He also told him to think next time who he decided to threaten. They kicked him and told him that if he didn't like something, he could leave the game at any time, but they warned him that if he entered the game again, he would see them again. The hen was watching from the tree. They didn't know about his presence. He knew they were newbie assassins, and they didn't leave the first city. Even when they reached level 12, they amused themselves by killing newly arrived players. He thought they were simple lowlifes who liked to bully the weak, but he didn't like them. What he saw made Hen angry, but he didn't plan to interfere yet. Hen thought that, with his current level, it would be unwise to interfere now. He turned around and was about to leave. He looked at his pet and told it to follow him. But Lucky didn't want to leave. He was determined to intervene, and Hen supported his pet's decision. He thought that after all, they could defeat the Goblin Champion with the two of them. The rookie assassins didn't even suspect that someone might be watching them. They were talking about the mages and wondering if they were all stronger together than one Goblin Champion. After disposing of the newcomer, the assassins went further into the forest in search of other newcomers. It wasn't long before they came to a road where there was plenty of unsuspecting prey for them. The largest of the assassins decided to start massacring them. With the one who was closest to him, he swung his mace and prepared to attack the innocent newcomer who would not be able to defend against his attack. But suddenly, a fireball hit him in the face, and he didn't have time to kill the newcomer. Now, he himself was attacked by who knows who. He wasn't expecting the attack at all and was focused on killing the newcomer. He fell to the ground and didn't move. His two companions looked to see who could have done it. They thought it was one of the newcomers standing next to them, but they themselves rushed out of there in fear. Hen thought it wasn't strange that he decided to attack the big guy who fell from one attack. He appeared behind their backs and pretended to be taking online footage. He said that the topic of today's broadcast was hunting for rookie assassins. He showed them everything and told them he was a great magician, alive, and about to start a duel that not everyone would escape. The killers realized they were in big trouble, that a streamer had come out on them. One of them started hiding his face, thinking he was filming them. Still, his friend said they should have hidden their nickname so they couldn't be found later. Hen saw their reaction and thought he was just mocking them. They seriously thought he was a streamer. He was surprised that they were scared of a normal live stream and that they were being filmed. He attacked the second assassin with an ice arrow, and the archer couldn't understand. He only used a fireball, and following that, he attacked them with an ice arrow. He realized that the only class that possessed 2 or more schools of magic was the Archmage. The assassin looked at him once more with fear in his eyes. He thought that now the character in front of him was a character that belonged to a wealthy man. He was just shocked that they were attacked by an Archmage. He got scared and started running towards the forest. Hen saw this. She laughed hard, but he still decided to teach him a lesson to ensure they didn't attack defenseless newcomers in the future. The assassin was attacked by his pet, Lucky. He knocked him to the ground and started biting him, but the wounds were not fatal. He waited for his master to approach. When Hen approached, the assassin looked at him and remembered his first words, that he was a great mage. He looked at him angrily. He realized he was already doomed to die, but he still decided to tell him that he remembered his nickname and that he would be able to get revenge on him someday. Hen came even closer to him and, with a smile on his face, told him to remember his nickname well and to sign up for it. Then he took out his magic wand and finished him off. After dealing with the assassins, Hen lowered their karma level and increased the number of items he could use. He enjoyed teaching them a lesson, but he hated those who were in the business of killing other players. Hen thought that previously, he could be sure that getting items depended only on luck. Still, now he had changed his mind and realized there was another way to get items. He spread out the cards and wanted to see what would fall out this time. He managed to get leather armor and goblin champion pants. These were unique items that gave a set effect when worn with a goblin champion mask. Hen didn't even think twice about putting on all of his equipment, thus activating the goblin champion's kit. Now his total stats were increased by 25 points, and he also increased the damage on goblins by 10%. He looked at all of his character's characteristics. Although he had only managed to cross the 100 intelligence point threshold at level 15 on his previous account, his intelligence was much higher. Hen couldn't look at his performance. He was incredibly happy. He thought that if anyone else saw it, they would probably think it was a simple glitch in the game's system. Suddenly, his joy was interrupted by Lucky, who started barking, thus scaring him. He looked at him and said that he understood that Lucky was in a good mood, but he asked him to stop howling. But this was no ordinary howl. The system notified Hen that his god creature, Lucky, had gained a new skill and gave him the choice of Lucky. Cards appeared in front of him with possible skills. Hen realized that the divine being's skill plus the card's color told him that Lucky would get a legendary rank, and he clicked on the card, waiting for more information. Lucky gained a legendary rank and became a treasure hunter. Lucky now could find rare hidden treasures other players didn't even notice. But Hen wasn't quite sure what exactly he could find, treasures or rare items, and he didn't have any more information. He sat and thought for a while, and something occurred to him. He began to remember everything he had ever heard about such abilities. He was sure he had heard of them before. Hen remembered that there was a man who was dubbed the luckiest player, the guildmaster of the Immortals Guild. He had a divine creature called Fenrir, who was called Smarty Pants. As his nickname implies, his entire content consisted of finding hidden dungeons, and he was so lucky that it was hard to believe. However, some thought it was all fiction. Hen thought, but what if all his luck was with the treasure hunter? He wasn't that lucky and was just a simple player, but with an unusual divine being. He decided that he too had gotten such a lucky pet who could search out all the hidden treasures in the first city. They traveled further afield, and Hen decided to try out Lucky's hunting skills. Lucky lurched through the trees, and after a moment, he used his new ability. Hen saw that there were already hidden treasures all around him. He found some rare horn mushrooms and a rare medicinal herb, Rosella. Hen collected them and thought they could be sold for a good price. He saw plants he had never seen before, and now he knew that Lucky's ability was paying off. He looked at his pet and told him that he was his priceless treasure. They moved further and further into the depths of the forest, but then Lucky smelled something. He stopped abruptly and looked somewhere. They approached the tree and saw that there was a small hollow underneath it that looked like an entrance. Lucky moved closer, and Hen thought he had discovered something. The system notified him that they had found the hidden dungeon of a goblin shaman. Hen couldn't believe that they had managed to find a hidden dungeon. He remembered that even in the first city, he had never seen a secret dungeon, and now he was the discoverer. He realized that now he could live the whole month completely trouble-free. He was starting to get really worried and needed to calm down. He took a little breather and started thinking that he should have sold that information. He wouldn't be able to call himself an honest gamer anymore. So he decided to clear this dungeon by himself without informing anyone. This was his chance to find rare items and get rich, but he didn't know what awaited him inside the dungeon. The orcs were practicing inside the dungeon, and the chief goblin shaman was watching them from his throne. He sat silently and watched the other goblins, and he didn't even realize that his hidden hideout could be discovered. But suddenly, right in front of him, someone started killing his servants. Soon, he saw Hen, who came with one purpose, to clean the dungeon from the goblin shaman. He was happy to find a secret dungeon that appeared near the first town. When Hen saw the goblin shaman, he realized he didn't have much life force reserve, but the boss and his underlings were there to distract him from the boss's attacks. He realized that to defeat the goblin shaman, he needed to wait for the right moment to attack. Hen got ahead and struck him with his blade, thinking that would be enough. After the attack, Hen bounced to a safe distance. He was surprised by the damage he had done. He had never experienced the true power of such high characteristics before. With such power, he could fight almost anyone. He didn't stop attacking the goblin shaman. He was dealing more and more damage to it. There was only a little left for him to overpower it, and he used a fireball to stay away from it. Hen saw that the goblin was still alive, and his attacks weren't enough to kill him. He had hoped to finish him with a fireball, but he now had to dodge and figure out how to overpower him again. The goblin shaman wanted to get even with him, and a dark sphere appeared in his hand that absorbed all his anger and hatred. It could be a potent attack that would be difficult to dodge. But the goblin lost sight of his pet Lucky, who clawed at his leg with his sharp teeth. This distracted the goblin, and he couldn't finish making the orb. He missed his opportunity to attack. Hen was glad that Lucky had interrupted the process of using the goblin's spell, which gave him the opportunity to attack him. He thought Lucky had only won a second, but it was very important in this fight. He didn't waste the opportunity and launched a decisive fireball attack, which killed the goblin shaman. After defeating it, Hen was glad he could do it alone. Hen hugged his divine being and was about to leave, but he noticed that the goblin shaman got up and started to say something to him. The Hen was confused and thought it was impossible. He didn't understand why he had come back to life. The system had notified him that he had defeated him, but then the goblin started shouting at him that he had come for him, and that the war of the gods was about to begin, where he would find him and take revenge. After the goblin finished speaking, he fell back on his throne and began to turn to ash. Hen watched and couldn't understand what was happening. He thought it was some sort of glitch in the game. Hen thought this was quite a strange dungeon, but right now, he wasn't bothered by the talking goblin. He wanted to see his reward for defeating the boss as soon as possible. He decided to watch a replay of this fight later and sell it afterward. He opened his item vault to see what had fallen out. While he was looking at the items, Lucky was happily running around him. Hen was rewarded with a goblin shaman staff. He was impressed with it. It was a unique weapon that could be sold for decent money, which he really needed. He looked up the characteristics of the staff and saw that it was available to players with level 10 or higher, and the attack had to be at least 31. He also noticed that there was an option to sell it and thought that was cool since he didn't need this staff. As soon as Hen confirmed the sale of the staff, the system notified him that it was impossible to sell the item. He got angry and didn't understand why he needed the staff. He lost his temper and wanted to break the staff, but he failed. He was so nervous and screaming that he didn't hear the system notification tell him that a main quest had been created. He didn't pay attention to it and kept screaming, but suddenly, he remembered something about the main quest that made him calm down. Hyun recalled that the scientist who developed the game, Kim Min-soo, the creator of the most immersive virtual reality world, was asked in an interview why he used new technologies to create various games. Kim Min-soo replied that he just wanted to write a story. It all started as a hobby, and he never expected to make money from it. He didn't aim to make as much money as possible. Soon after, Kim Min-soo died suddenly, and users began to explore the game, looking for the story he wrote. However, no one has been able to find it in the past 5 years. The story was called The Main Quest. Hen was shocked. Hen couldn't believe his happiness. He thought it was all an illusion, and he didn't believe it was happening to him. Nevertheless, he managed to find the long-lost quest. He thought that the players were looking for this main quest in all corners of the virtual world, and he was in a place where no one expected to find him. It didn't occur to him that something important could be in the first city. Hen knew that the developers had repeatedly received complaints about the game's lack of a main quest. Hen also knew that some people had tried to ogle him in the first city, thanks to the Travelers Guild. He figured that if the guild turned the search in this place into baloney, someone would still manage to find the main quest. But to his luck, no one had managed to do so. He had managed to complete this quest, and Hen was not going to tell anyone about it. He wanted to keep it a secret so that no one would ask him to be his partner, so he decided to go through the main quest alone. Hen leaned over to pet Lucky. He believed he had managed to find the quest because of him. It was an incredible treasure that others could only dream of. The system alerted him that he hadn't opened the random skill card and offered to open it now. Hen thought he would deal with the card first. He wanted to finish the main quest immediately. He confirmed the card's opening, and then he was blinded by the bright light coming from it. He had the skill Polymorph, which allowed him to transform into the monsters he killed. It was a legendary skill. Hen was stunned and couldn't believe it. After receiving the legendary skill, Hen headed to the first city, where he was waiting for the main quest. He did not give the appearance that he had managed to find such a treasure. He quietly walked without attracting attention. Hen needed to go to the first town and talk to Yun about the nameless god. He knew that after meeting him, players would leave the town. Yun's house was a secret entrance to a dungeon that was created by the system specifically for the player, bypassing the guild. He entered Yuna's house completely silent, but it appeared that his presence did not go unnoticed. Suddenly, he heard a voice. Surprised, he stopped, realizing that he was not alone in the house. In front of him stood a huge bald man. This was Yun, he asked him. He had come to leave this city and go to the big and uncharted world. He could help him with that, but he waited patiently for an answer from him. Hen replied that he had come to them for that too, but he had one question for him. Did he know anything about the nameless god? Hen looked at Yun and waited for him to tell him something. He noticed that a bright light appeared on him. He thought that he had managed to get a quest. Yun answered that a nameless god was lost in the War of the Gods and was forced to leave the throne after defeat. Then they ceased to be gods, and their names were consigned to oblivion. It was said that before their defeat, they left somewhere in this world their inheritance for the next generation. Yun looked at him carefully and asked if he wanted to find these treasures. These treasures were all that was left of the nameless god, and if he managed to find them, they could be his. The Hen could already smell the legendary treasures. He was sure that he could find the legacy of the nameless god, and he wanted to see them as soon as possible. He confirmed that he wanted to go and asked where he could see them. Yun, taking off the ring, told him that once upon a time he had tried to follow the treasure trail, but he couldn't reach the end, and now those treasures were beyond his reach. He took off the ring and held it out in Hen's hand. He hoped that maybe he would be able to find the lost treasure. He asked him to take the ring. He would have to find it in another city. Yun told him to find Sakhalin in the city of Viga, and added that he should show her this ring. She would tell him what he needed to do next to find the legacy. Hen took the ring and did not hide his joy that he had managed to find this quest. He dreamed of the treasure that the nameless god had hidden, and he was overwhelmed with emotions. Now, he could start the main quest. Yun said that was all he could tell him, and now he asked the main question. If he was ready to leave this city and step into the big world, and held out his hand if he warned that if he left the town, he wouldn't be able to go back. Hen thought that he would finally be able to leave this city. He cheerfully confirmed that he was ready to leave, and then Yun set the seal and was ready to send him to another world. Yun wished him luck in his quest and sent him off. He used a portal to get him safely to another world. After a moment, a huge beam flew out of his house and disappeared into the sky. One statement that absolutely all players agreed with was that the real game only started after leaving the first city, and in another world, you had to show all your skills to survive. The other players were insanely happy to be able to leave the first city. Some of them had spent a fortune to do so, and they were excitedly looking around. Hen walked as if he was no longer a newcomer to this city. The other players noticed him and were surprised that he didn't hesitate to walk forward as if he knew where to go. They thought he was a pro on a new account. He was already in Wig City and understood where he was supposed to go the ring Yun had given him. He noticed that its additional effects were as good as the legendary ones, and it even had the effect of recruiting with Sakhalin's ring. Hen hoped that similar rewards would still await him if he progressed on the main quest. He also hoped that he could obtain enough items to sell them. Suddenly he laughed. He thought it was too good to be true, but he couldn't stop smiling. He realized that in the future his character could be even more pumped up, which meant the items would be even better. Hen hid Lucky so as not to attract too much attention, but he wouldn't sit still and kept popping out. Hen hit him back. He wasn't like Fenrir yet, but he still had to be careful. He decided to go straight to visit Sakhalina, whom Yun had told him about. He found her house and decided to go in right away. He didn't wait to be invited or to open the door. As soon as he entered, He heard a voice that asked him who he was and how he was able to enter this house, hidden by magic. He turned around and saw a little girl. This was the character, Sakhaline. She pointed knives at him with magic. Hen asked her to confirm that she was Sakhaline, told her that Yoon had given him the ring, and told him to find her. Hen took out the ring and showed it to Sakhaline, who couldn't believe he had it. After Hen showed her the ring, he saw a system notification that he had completed the quest. He thought that was excellent, and now he could move on to the next quest. Sakhalina looked at Heng and couldn't believe that Yoon had sent such a brat to her to do a quest. She thought the old man was already senile and didn't understand who was coming to him. She told him that she didn't waste her time on a kid like him who was only good for catching goblins, and that if he wanted to talk to her, he had to prove he was worthy of it. Sakhalina had given him the task of killing 10,000 orcs, and she had created a new quest in the main scenario. Now, he had to complete the quest to continue talking to her and find out more information. When he heard what kind of quest he had, he lost his temper with anger. He thought her quest was absolute nonsense, and that it would take a very long time to do this quest, but Sakhalina provoked him by saying that he couldn't do it. He thought it was kind of a no-brainer, but he didn't realize how many weeks would pass before he could kill 10,000 orcs. He thought it could take months, which gave him a feeling of panic. When Hen realized that he didn't have that much time for this, he saw the system notification again. In it, he read that by hunting orcs, he would be able to recover the fragment of the nameless god, and that this quest wasn't just for killing orcs. He went into the forest to fulfill a quest and search for goblins. He noticed a group of players trying to overpower a huge orc. They tried to deal as much damage as possible while their comrade held him back. Hen understood the point of this quest. He didn't want the goblins themselves, but an item that could fall out of them. If she told him to kill 10,000 orcs, then if you caught them randomly, the chance of items falling out was 0.01%. He knew that since he had seen all the hidden information, he just needed to find whoever had the item he needed. It gave him hope to finish the quest much faster. Now he had another problem. The orc he needed was already being targeted by another group that had arrived a bit earlier than him, and he couldn't just take their prey away from them. He had to think of something. Hen thought that if this was a game, it would be harmful to just walk up and forcefully take the goblin away from them, since they were the first to target him. He noticed how suddenly one of them just froze in place. It was like he was now offline and unable to play. Now he was in danger. He could be killed by a goblin at any moment. The rest of his co-commanders realized what the problem was. They remembered that he hadn't left the game in a while, and the system forcefully threw him out of it. Hen saw the goblin was about to destroy the player, and he thought that he was an absolute dumbass for forgetting to quit the game. He felt that if he was lucky, his problem might have solved itself. Following one player, the system kicked out another of their co-commanders, leaving only 2 of them. They didn't know what to do without their leading players when a goblin attacked them. The goblin was about to launch an attack on the remaining players, but he was suddenly hit in the face by a fireball that saved them. Hen appeared on top of the mountain, making it look like he was again broadcasting live from the game. He went on to say that they had stumbled upon a group in trouble and were ready to help them and rescue them from a rampaging goblin. Hen looked at the confused player and wondered what he should do in such a situation. The player, trembling with fear, shouted to him to help him and save him from the goblin. He smiled and said he hoped everyone heard the plea for help. Then he decided to go down and deal with the goblin. He was ready for a duel with him. Lucky was the first to attack the goblin. He clawed into its neck with his teeth. Hen's fireball reinforced Lucky's attack. They tried to maximize the damage and not prolong the fight. Hen wasn't really surprised at how much damage he could do to the orcs, and he had just left the first city. He thought that people were so into games and spent a lot of money just because of that nice feeling of triumph. He had managed to survive this game for 5 whole years, without a drop of luck through sheer persistence alone. The goblin never stopped trying to attack, and he used ice arrows to keep him away. The goblin had no chance of surviving a fight with him. Hen used his fireball ability to end the battle. He figured that now, even orcs were nothing to him. The system notified him that he had defeated the orc, and the other players returned to the game. They apologized for missing at the worst possible moment. When they saw the dead goblin, they couldn't understand what had happened. They were at a loss to explain how they had defeated such a strong opponent. The rescued players approached Hen and thanked him for his help. Without him, they would have been dead. He replied that there was no need for thanks and that they should have all stuck together. Hen smiled and thought that now he would have to get rid of the newbies because God Wars ruled that whoever attacked the monster first got most of the items. By that rule, he could get nothing now, so he had to think of something to trick them and take the reward for himself. He asked them to wait a bit, and he had to go away for a while. He informed them that he was having an online broadcast and needed to address his viewers. He turned his back on them and pretended to thank his subscribers for their donations. Hen did a little trick, saying his audience wanted to see the items received for defeating the goblin. Still, he said they knew the rules, and he couldn't get the items because he wasn't the first to start attacking him. Hearing him talk, the other players happily gave him the right to get the items, saying that if it wasn't for him, they would have been crushed by that goblin, so he deserved to get the items. Hen didn't take long to reply that, in that case, it would be rude to refuse such a gift. He was glad that his plan had worked and that he was able to get the items. He turned around and pretended to address his subscribers, showing them the other players. He wanted everyone to see that they weren't greedy and gave him the right to receive the award. Hen walked over to the goblin's ashes and said that he would proceed to collect the reward. He added that if an item above rank rare fell to him, he would arrange a prize drawing among them. He stretched his hand over the ashes and prepared to collect the items. He got 3 items into his inventory and thought they weren't bad. He turned to the players and said that the items weren't above rank rare, so the raffle would be arranged another time. Hen was about to leave. He had won and taken what he came for. Now he had to go back to Sakhalina, but a player approached him and apologized. He wanted to know his nickname. He was surprised by his request, but the player explained that he thought their meeting was momentous and wanted to publicize it to his friends. He was delighted at how he had defeated the goblin. Hen looked at him thoughtfully. He realized that he wasn't live streaming today and was just pretending, but someday he would definitely start doing it, so he told him that his nickname was Archmage Streamer. He returned to Sakhalina's house and gave her the shard she needed. She was shocked that he could get it and thought he was too lucky, to which Hen replied that he really was. She had no choice but to accept the shard and consider the quest completed, though she was not happy. She didn't like Hen, and now she had to tell him all the information about the lost treasure. After completing the quest, Hen could get a random skill again. He scattered the cards and got the skill of long-range cast, which allowed him to attack enemies at a distance. Hen thought it was ideal for battling large monsters. Sakhalina held the shard in her hands and looked at Hen, who couldn't understand why she needed it. He didn't know its purpose. She told him that finding the nameless god was difficult because magical restrictions were put in place to ensure that only former characters of that god could follow its trail. Sakhalin clutched the shard in her hand and began to remake it into something. She asked him what he thought it would take to bypass the magical restrictions. Hen couldn't give an answer yet because he was quite shocked at what she was doing. When she finished transforming the shard, Hen told her that he had to pretend to be a former god character to pass the magical restrictions. He confirmed this and gave him a ring made from the shard of the nameless god. The ring allowed him to pass all the magical restrictions set by the nameless god on his altar. He became very curious about this place and wanted to go there as soon as possible. Sakhalina looked at him and asked him what he was going to do next, and warned him that it was a perilous path in which he could die. Hen, with full confidence in his powers, replied that no danger would stop him. He was bound to seek his treasure. He had no other way. After their conversation, Hen received a new chapter in the main quest. Now, he had to find a secret altar, and if he completed the quest, he could get a random skill card of legendary rank. He was madly surprised to see the reward. He realized that meant the quest would be insanely difficult. This was the first time he had seen a legendary skill as a reward for a quest, which surprised him a little. Hen thought that finding the location of the altar wouldn't be a problem with Lucky. Hunting orcs that gave a unique map as a reward was time-consuming for other players, but for him it was now a non-issue. He was walking through the market with Lucky, plagued by one thought. The quest was to solve the mystery of the altar. He didn't understand what that could mean. Suddenly Lucky barked at him and stopped. He sat up and looked at Hen. He asked him if he could find an altar for him, to which Lucky barked happily, and Hen told him he was the best wolf in the world. They entered the suspicious forest where Lucky had led them. They walked deep into the forest and saw something that looked like the entrance to an altar. But Hen couldn't believe that the entrance to the altar was an ordinary burrow. Hen thought that was to be expected from a lousy RNG game. The entrance was impossible to find, and if it wasn't for Lucky and his attentiveness, they might have gotten past him. He decided to log in and look for information about this dungeon. He discovered the altar was dedicated to a god whose name was hidden from him. There was also a warning that the altar had an incredible stench. Hen thought the zombie orc was a boss much stronger and more dangerous than an ordinary orc. Only players whose level was below 20 could enter the dungeon. He sat and thought about the information he had gotten. Then he got up and looked at Lucky and said it was time to hunt something else. Lucky looked at him and didn't understand why he didn't want to kill the boss. Hen said that they should have just forgotten about this dungeon. Hen said that defeating the boss alone, with his level, was a very difficult task, and he might die in the battle. He felt that he wasn't ready to fight orcs of that level yet. He turned around and was about to leave. He said that if the dungeon was recommended for level 20, they could return to this place when he reached it. He felt that there was no need to complicate their situation now. Hen looked at Lucky, and with a smile on his face, told him that it was time for them to move on, to level up. He was going to show him real hunting, and what it meant to get carried away in a battle. They went deep into the forest to search for the goblins, and they found the players desperately trying to kill the enormous orc that was attacking them. He realized that the players didn't have enough combat power to overpower him. He overheard a player asking to be healed faster, or he would be kicked off a quest that was taking place in real time. He added that his damage was negligible, and if he lacked skill, he should have lured the orc away rather than attacking. But he didn't want to be cannon fodder and survive only with his potions, which cost a huge amount of money. As there were usually fierce battles in the forest, Hen thought, he realized that the leader of the group was a player who provided them with protection. Hen recalled that when he first started playing on the team 5 years ago, he had a hard time keeping up with his teammates who were many times stronger than him, and he was very frustrated in such battles. Not long after that, rich players started buying up skills and items, and the gulf between their abilities started to grow, and he could no longer compete with them on the same level. He thought then that he hated those wealthy scum, but he supposed that now the other players looked at him and felt precisely the same as he did then. Hen noticed an unsuspecting orc walking past him who didn't see his presence. There was an aggression indicator above him, which showed that he was calm, and then Hen decided that he was an easy target for him. He took out his magic wand and began to aim at him. He decided to attack him from a distance so as not to engage in close combat. He used his ice arrow ability to stay as far away from the orc as possible. Hen released an arrow that hit the target exactly. He didn't delay his next attack and used a fireball to finish him off. He hit the orc and was able to increase his level. 2 players were walking through the square in town and said that a mage was single-handedly killing orcs in a suspicious forest. They didn't know who he was or why he was acting alone. One of them wanted to clarify if he was talking about a combo killer, to which the other replied that he had a rather dumb name. He explained to him that he was called that because he killed monsters with a single combo attack. All the players sitting in the bar were talking about him. They knew he had an Archmage class and that when he fought, he introduced live streaming. They thought he was just lucky to be born into a rich family. One player was curious about the item that could be obtained by killing a rich Archmage. He believed that you could pump up your character a lot after killing him. The Hen was fighting in the forest with orcs and noticed that his ears had started to itch lately. He thought that someone was talking about him or remembering him, which was very strange to him. He thought that right now he should have focused on the orc that was running straight at him to attack. He couldn't lose his concentration, or he could get seriously hurt. Hen picked himself up and prepared his attack. He made a fireball and used his staff to direct it at the orc. Using his baseball experience, he hit right on target and destroyed the orc with his powerful attack. After defeating the orc, the system notified him that he had reached level 20. He couldn't believe he had risen to this level, and he was crazy happy that they had managed to do it. He took Lucky in his arms and hugged him tightly, rejoicing with him. He thought that if only the game had been this easy for him 5 years ago, all 10 great guilds would have been at his feet by now. When he stopped rejoicing, he checked the skill card he had gotten in the battles with the orcs. He opened his inventory and started looking for it among his items. Lucky started barking in his arms, and Hen asked him what was wrong. He assumed that maybe he felt that they would get a legendary skill, but he noticed that nothing useful had been dropped to him since level 11. In the computer club among the capsules with players, there was a loud shout. Someone shouted that he had received a unique item, and he couldn't contain his emotions and wanted to share his joy with everyone. The other players couldn't understand what was going on. They didn't see the man shouting to them that he had gotten a unique item, and they didn't share his joy. He shouted to the club that he had gotten a unique ring, calling everyone present bastards. Still, he added that he would buy them anything they wished with the item. Hyuk-ju stood beside him and said that it had been a long time since anyone had found unique items. He asked Hen if he wanted to order something tasty. With a sad face, Hen replied that he didn't need anything. Hen asked him to customize his capsule. He wanted to get back into the game as soon as possible, but he wasn't in the mood and didn't want to spoil another player's holiday, so he decided to go to the virtual world. He didn't reveal that he had obtained a legendary skill. He thought it was tough to keep a sorrowful face in public when riches were pouring down on him. Hen understood that the ranged skill increased magic damage, and the dragon superiority increased all kinds of damage for all enemies. He was pleased that he had this skill. He knew that this skill also allowed every player fighting on his side to gain a temporary improvement in their stats so they could deal more damage to monsters. Hen thought that he would be far more useful than the average player now, even if he had just come to the raid and not participated in the battle. If he settled for little, he would simply join some guild for a quick profit. It would help his family out of their predicament. He thought they'd have enough money to send Heron to art school, drive her to school in his fancy car, and move into a big house where everyone would have their own private room. Lucky barked happily at everything Hen said to him. He looked at him and thought he didn't even know what he was telling him, but he liked that he was happy with him no matter what. Hen and Lucky walked back to the entrance of the dungeon. Lucky went into his inventory and put on a ring made from a shard of a nameless god. He thought he needed to use it to get into the hidden dungeon. He stuck his hand with the ring into the hole that was the entrance to the dungeon, and the first thing he felt was that it was deep enough. A moment later, the ring triggered, and he felt the magical barrier of the dungeon. The ring shattered it, and he could go inside. After that, the ground in front of him seemed to split apart. He was a little scared and did not understand what was happening, but soon, steps into the dungeon began to appear from the underground, and the entrance was open. They entered the dungeon, and before they could look around, they were attacked by a vast evil orc who attacked Lucky, but he failed to hit him, and Lucky dodged his attack. Hen came to Lucky's rescue, using a fireball to kill the evil orc. He figured it was already a 22-year-old orc, and if it was live, someone would definitely send him a donation. After defeating the orc, they had a chance to look around, and Hen saw a huge gate. He walked up to it and thought it was the boss's abode he needed to get into. When he opened the doors, he felt an incredible stench. He covered his nose with his hand, but it was too late. The system notified him that he was weakened from the horrible stench and that all his stats had been lowered by 10%. A system notification appeared in front of him. He recognized the zombie orc awakening. Hen realized that, following from the name, the boss was an undead. He thought that if it was a small boss, one could try for a legendary skill card. But his joy wasn't too long. He noticed above the monsters that he had 3 streaks of health points, but he couldn't figure out where he got them from. He looked at him and thought that his health was 30 times more than the other orcs. The orc noticed him and started attacking him, so he had no choice but to retreat. Hen realized that the orc was super survivable, but he noticed he was very slow. His speed was inversely proportional to the amount of his health. He scurried away to a safe distance to look at the monster. Now, having studied its characteristics, he realized that he was scared for no reason. Now he was ready to attack it. Hen used the fireball skill to attack him from a distance. He figured that with the orc's speed, he had a few seconds after using the spell to react to his attack. He attacked him and hit him right in the face, but he was surprised that he was able to take so little away from his health. He thought that this was a boss and that he would be hard to defeat. The battle could take a long time. Hen realized that despite all his difficulties in fighting the orc, he would eventually be able to defeat him, even if it took him all day. After a while, the system notified him that he had obtained the title of Unstoppable Warrior, as well as Steel Nerves and Arrow. For this, he received a rune. He managed to defeat a zombie orc, and after that, he thought it was time for them to go after the reward. He returned to Sakalin's home, where she said, that it was incredible to her that he had been able to find traces of the nameless god. He tried to tell her something, but she wouldn't listen to him. She couldn't believe that he had done it in such a short time. Hen continued trying to tell her what happened in the dungeon, but she didn't listen to him. She threw him the skill book and added that it was a gift for completing the quest. He took the book, but he told her it wasn't about the reward. He added that he liked the quick process, but he asked her to hear him out. He wanted to tell her something important. She realized that he was interested in the rotting orc's last words. He was shocked that she knew what he wanted to talk to her about, so he began to tell her what had happened after the battle. He said the following happened. He defeated an orc and turned his back on him to see what he got for killing him. He got a nice title for it, and he really liked its effects. But suddenly the orc came alive again. He called him a parasite and approached him. Hen was surprised that such a thing was possible and a little scared. The orc continued to say to him that he understood why he came to the dungeon. Hen remembered what had also happened with the shaman, now an orc. He didn't understand why they were coming back to life after he killed them, and he was confused by what was happening. But then the orc asked him if he really wished to find a weapon capable of destroying even a myth. Hen was in a stupor. He was shocked at what he had heard, and to make sense of it, he rushed to Sakhaline. She asked him to calm down and relax, continued, wondered if he would really be interested in this weapon, and fell silent, waiting for his answer. Hen didn't know what to say to her, as he didn't know what weapon was in question. Sakhalina noted that in that case, she would tell him everything she knew, but if he would do her a favor. Hen thought that the mythical item actually existed. He remembered how at the press conference, the game developer was asked if it was true that there was an item above legendary rank in the game. Reporters asked him to make an official statement as the game's developer, to which Kim Min-soo ambiguously replied that he didn't know, but suggested that such an item might have existed. This raised more questions about it. But it was not an answer that instilled confidence in people, and after this interview, no one was able to search for the mythical object. The news was surrounded by rumors and seemed to be a bluff. Hen was walking and thinking that this could really turn out to be a disaster. If he just made it public, it could affect not only him, but his family too. He realized that he couldn't deal with the consequences of making this kind of information public. It could even affect reality, but if he approached it wisely and was able to prepare himself, he could probably tell the rest of the people. The hen was carrying Lucky under his hoodie so no one could see him. At some point, Lucky got out and barked at him. Hen told him he realized he was stuffy in there but needed to be patient for a while. He thought he needed to complete the quest. He sat at home, thinking about how challenging the quest could be. He had to fight a killer orc, and to defeat him, he had to work hard. The reward for it wasn't the best. Even so, everyone was trying to beat him because the killer orc in the game was the boundary that separated the newcomers from the higher ranks. Hen understood that it was a minimum requirement for career advancement, like how to win a high school baseball contest in elementary school. He looked at his phone and thought this monster had an unreasonably high raid difficulty. He already knew he was in for a tough battle. Still, after familiarizing himself with the information, he concluded he wouldn't be able to handle it alone. Hen thought he would have to find a partner for such a dangerous raid this time, which he didn't want to do. He didn't notice his brother appear behind him and ask what he was looking at so intently. He turned around and replied that it was nothing special, he was just working, but his brother kept looking at him. He told him that he had been in a good mood lately and that work was going very well and asked him not to be so serious. Hen asked him to smile more and enjoy life, to which his brother just sighed. Hen asked why he was sighing. Their life was getting better and they shouldn't worry about anything, but his brother wanted to know when he would get married. He was surprised by such a question and didn't know what to answer. He told his brother that he was too worried about it and asked to study more. Heron's brother didn't bother him with this question and didn't ask anything more. Hen thought things were going well lately. With just the sale of hidden information and a couple of game items, he could not worry about money for a few months. He thought that a ton of dust was still not a mountain, and since he decided to play on his own and fight the killer orc on his own, he looked at his brother and said that he would be out for a while. Hen walked down the street and thought about his brother's words about getting married. He also thought about the fact that he had nothing to do, like going out with some snotty newbies to ask for groups. It was not for him. He was sure that he would manage on his own together with Lucky. He arrived at the computer club and sat in his pod. Right after loading the game, Lucky rushed at him, waiting for him to return. Hen hugged him and told him it was time for them to go hunting. Hen thought that Midas wasn't the most popular nickname, but if he started looking for a group to hunt the killer orc, then everyone would know about him. He didn't want to reveal his identity just yet. He held Lucky in his arms and said he was the only one he had. After those words, he saw a question mark above him. He knew Lucky was about to evolve. He had been waiting for this moment. Hen thought that now was the time for Lucky to evolve like other divine beings. He wanted to see if evolution changed the creature's experience. He remembered that it was said that the evolution requirement for divine beings was to kill 5,000 monsters. He didn't know if that information was wrong. Hen guessed that he could accumulate around 400 reaches if he defeated all 5,000 monsters. He felt this was valuable information he planned to sell later in the community. He decided to help Lucky evolve as fast as possible. Lucky was already tearing orcs to pieces, and when he came, he could go at the killer orc together. Hen lit up with the desire to help Lucky faster. He was already going to attack everyone who would get in his way, but he realized that it would be just fine to get a unique skill as a reward. They ran deep into the forest. Hen believed that Lucky would have succeeded, but he also realized that finishing off 400 orcs quickly would not be possible. However, they still had to do everything possible to do so. Hen noticed one orc and decided they would kill it first. He figured that as long as it stood still and didn't attack, it was the perfect moment to try out the skill learned from Lady Sakhalin. This was the third legendary skill after Polymorph and Dragon Supremacy. Hen thought that since he had used it at half strength until now, it was time to experience its full power. He wanted to see how good the Dragon Eye was in combat. With this skill, Hen could see the target's weak points, and when he would hit the monster with a magic attack, he would deal critical damage to it. Hen knew that there was no auto-aim in this game, so it was confirmed that the accuracy skill was important. Still, in reality, only the bare minimum was needed. Because it was not important where to hit, the main thing was to hit the monster. But for him, it was no longer relevant. He activated the effect of Dragon Eyes and long-range cast. His target was 40 meters away, so it was important not to miss. Hen thought that hitting the weak spot from the maximum distance would increase the damage to the maximum, and then the passive effects would overlap. He threw a fireball and hit the monster's weak spot, a magic critical strike, and he got the title Orc with one hit and a rune. Hen was glad that he was able to kill him the first time. He was amazed at the power of the blow he had delivered, and he realized that he now had even more titles. He looked at Lucky and asked what he thought of his new abilities, but noticed that Lucky was upset. He had forgotten entirely for him and promised that he would be sure to finish off the monster next time. Hekju noticed that Hen was sitting with his head down again. He thought he was having a hard day today too. Hekju went over to him to make sure he was okay. Hen replied that he was fine and thanked him for his concern. He asked him if he had visited the suspicious forest recently. He had heard that the stench had diminished slightly, but no one knew why that had happened. Hen was surprised to hear about it. He thought it might be because he had killed the boss of the hidden dungeon, and he thought it was because of the boss that the forest was stinking. Now Hen realized that the main quest could affect the world like this. If this continued, other players might notice someone mopping up the main quest piecemeal. He figured he would need to deal with the killer orc as soon as possible. Hen wanted to ward off suspicion and said that players still played with their sense of smell turned on in the suspicious forest. He thought they were crazy. He logged back into the game and traveled with Lucky to a suspicious forest so he could fight the orcs and let Lucky finish them off. After a couple of hours, they were able to make 444 kills, and Lucky's body began to overflow with divine powers. Lucky started to evolve. He got bigger and stronger, and he was now more like Fenrir and looked quite formidable. The Hen was glad that Lucky had become. After the transformation, Lucky received a new power from the god. Now they had to choose a new power for him. Spreading out the random skill cards, Hen hugged Lucky and realized that he had gotten the luckiest dog. They looked at the cards, and Hen told him that he thought he had gotten his nickname wrong and should have named him Cheat Code instead of Lucky because he was fortunate. Hen couldn't believe this skill could appear among the cards. This skill would allow him to defeat an orc assassin alone. He wouldn't have to find anyone to partner with, and he didn't need to pump up his hero even more for this quest. He saw Heinz's group gathered around the fire, talking about the guild that had signed a new rising star, and it looked like the three of them had come to hunt an orc assassin. But their conversation stopped abruptly. They began to prepare for battle. A system notification informed them that the killer orc had appeared. One of them wanted to know which ones they were in line for, and how many groups were waiting on the orc. He was told that it looked like someone was now trying to kill the orc assassin on their own, and take all the rewards for themselves, leaving the other players with nothing. They wanted to know who dared to fight the orc on their own. There were a few rules that everyone had to follow during team play. Players who were dealing damage had to wait until the players in charge of defense would attract the monster's attention. But what was to be done if a skill could be used to forcibly lure the enemy even in the middle of battle? Hen gave the command, and Lucky used such a skill to lure the killer to himself. The orc stopped his assault on the players. He had heard Lucky challenge him, and now he was forced to go to battle with him specifically, forgetting about other targets. It was a deadly battle. A divine being challenged an enemy, and the chosen opponent could not attack anyone but the celestial beast. Hen saw the orc and prepared to fight him. While the orc was looking at Lucky, Hen used a fireball. It hit the target from the maximum distance, thus increasing the damage. He managed to hit his weak spot with magic, giving him a critical hit. Hen realized that his actions were angering the killer orc. He knew that it wouldn't be long before the monster entered Phase 3. He needed to stay calm and not lose concentration. Phase 3 was the most dangerous. One of the players offered to look at the player trying to fight the orc killer on his own. He thought he probably wouldn't have been able to defeat such a powerful opponent. He went on to say that he thought he had a chance, but the player doubted it a lot. He thought it was impossible to survive the third phase of slaughter mode on his own. Hen continued to make fire attacks as he tried to approach the monster's third phase. After another attack, the monster fell to its knees and was covered in red flames. Hen realized what this could lead to. He shouted to Lucky with all his might that the monster had started to move to Phase 3, and for him to run away from there was too dangerous for him. Lucky turned around and ran towards him to wait for the monster's attack together. Hen knew that the higher the player's level, the more important the role of the player taking the hit was, because it was incredibly difficult for players who fought at a distance to fight effectively against strong monsters. But if they had mechanics that could distract the enemy while they dealt damage, they didn't need to rely on defense players, no matter how high their level. The orc assassin moved into Phase 3 and became even more dangerous. While he hunted Lucky, Hen stood at his back and prepared to unleash his attack. He took aim and thought that now he may have pitched the ball of his life. Hen realized that he was desperate, striving with every cell of his soul for this moment, preparing for it with great determination and passion. A great deal for him depended on this throw. He threw a fireball and watched it fly with a hopeful look in his eye. His accuracy did not fail, and it hit right on target. He was able to kill the orc assassin himself and still take no damage. After completing the task and leveling up, Hen got the new title of the winner of the Orc Assassin on his own. He was happy that they had succeeded, but now it was time to run away before other players got there. He was back in the house again with Sakalina. When she saw him, she said she was surprised that he was able to deal with the killer orc so quickly and was amazed at his abilities. Hen held Lucky in his arms and answered her that he wasn't even hurt. He looked like battles were familiar to him, and he wasn't afraid of anyone and could defeat any monster. Sakhalin said that since this test wasn't that difficult for him, it meant that he still wasn't worthy of learning the truth about the almighty class. But she continued that even so, he deserved to be rewarded. She raised her hand and removed the ring she had given him from her finger. He now had Sakhalin's ring, which increased his stats. He said it was just gorgeous. He sat down to show Lucky the ring, and he was incredibly happy to have such an award. Sakhalin asked him to stop coddling her wolf. She had important information for him, and she said it was time to get down to business. She began to tell him that the times when the gods sent their creations to fight each other were tough. To make him realize how brutal the wars were, she used magic to show him that. Sakhalin went on to say that countless hordes had clashed in battle, each fighting in the name of their god. Legendary feats had been performed in that war that are remembered to this day. She decided to tell him that in that war, among thousands of other warriors, there had been one hero among them whose greatness no one had yet been able to surpass. He was called Invincible, In the name of his god, he conquered and performed great deeds in each of the battles. He inspired terror in his enemies, and in his allies, he commanded respect and admiration. But despite his efforts, the war could not end. Sakhalin suddenly became silent and thought about something. She was sad that this warrior could not achieve peace. She went on to say that when the warrior realized that no amount of victory would end the war of the gods, she closed her hand and her magic ended. Hen listened to Sakhalin carefully and understood that complete victory was impossible. Even if he had a legendary artifact, it wouldn't help him stop the war. But then his thoughts were interrupted by Sakhalin, who went on to say that this hero then began to search for an artifact superior to the legendary one. He needed a weapon that could end the war. It was omnipotent. Hen was shocked to hear about it. He realized that there was a weapon with destructive power that could hit even one of the gods. Sakhalin looked at him carefully and asked if he wanted more information. Hen cheerfully replied that he would very much like to, but to find out what was next, she asked him to do another task for her. She smiled and asked him to go again to the cursed forest and exterminate 1,000 zombies. Now he had a new chapter in the main quest he needed to fulfill. Hen laughed and said that it was the same as always. He needed to find a monster with the item he needed in his inventory. He already knew what tasks she had given him. He looked at the quest description and had one question for Sakhalin. He didn't understand why he needed to exterminate exactly 1,000 monsters, and he wanted to know if there was a way to lower that number. She turned to him and asked him what was confusing him. She assumed he just didn't feel like doing the quest, but he smiled at her and replied that it was fine and he would gladly do it. Hen exited the game and thought that he hated it for such tasks. He sat in the capsule and thought about the task. He couldn't even imagine how long it would take him to kill 1,000 monsters. Hyokju informed him that while he was in the game, someone called him. He picked up the phone and saw that it was his brother. He hoped that nothing had happened to him. He heard Heron's voice, and he asked her what had happened. She wanted to let him know that she had gotten her diploma. His brother answered the phone, asked if he was busy, and told him that Heron had brought home a diploma from daycare. She had been given one for her drawing, and she said she wanted to tell her uncle about it. Hen was overjoyed when he heard about her diploma. He realized she had won the kindergarten drawing contest. Still, his brother said she had won the city contest, which was even better. He said that she had won first place in the city, and her work would also be sent to the regional drawing contest. Hen couldn't believe that Heron could achieve such a result. Hen was even happier and said that he would have a celebration today. He asked her to tell her that he would bring her fried chicken for dinner tonight, and they all celebrated together. His brother laughed and told him that Heron was embarrassed, but Hen didn't understand why. When he asked what the matter was, his brother replied that she didn't know now what sauce to ask him for, regular or sweet and spicy. Hen listened to his brother and thought that this was a big event for them. Since it had been so long since he had been able to afford to treat the child with goodies, it made him a little sad. After thinking for a bit, Hen told his brother that she shouldn't have been embarrassed. He would just buy her all the sauces she wanted. Hearing this, Heron literally started snatching the phone from her father. When Hyokju heard Hyun's conversation with his brother and niece, he was amazed by it. Although he was having trouble with his blocked account, he still did his best to take care of his family. The administrator went to his phone and found a new video, which he decided to watch while he was off work. The next day, Hyun returned to the club and said hello to Hyokju, and it was obvious that he was slowly coming to his senses after being blocked. Hen asked him what interesting video he was watching, to which Hyokju replied that a new video on WarSteve came out yesterday, and everyone was just talking about it. He wanted to know what the video was all about, and he explained to him that some rich guy armed to the teeth had single-handedly killed a big boss. It hit everyone, and the video quickly went viral. Hen started to get indignant so as not to arouse suspicion. He said that because of donations, the whole game was ruined, and that now any rich person could become a superhero and thus ruin the game for the rest. He thought it was unfair and asked who he had killed. He decided to watch the video himself and see how popular it had become. He went to the WarStv channel, where a girl was commenting on a video that had been uploaded today about killing a killer orc. She started the review by saying that no one was surprised, and that killing the killer orc on her own was a prime example of what kind of garbage this game has become for donations. The girl went on to say that from what she saw, it could be inferred that the player had used his divine being as bait for the killer orc, so users were unsure whether it was considered a victory on its own. Han paid attention to the views and didn't understand where so many of them came from. After all, he wasn't trying to get into the trends. He was rather trying to avoid them. Now, he didn't know what he should do next. He thought that if he knew the video would have such resonance, he would have uploaded it himself. He thought he might try to upload the next video under the guise of leaking information. The hen did not notice how a man stood behind him and resented that these donated sharks were ruining the game, to which Hen replied that he had not killed a human but a monster, so he could not worry and continued to play calmly. He got up and was about to leave. He looked at that guy and told him not to judge a person badly if he didn't know him personally, but he didn't understand what Hen was telling him, so Hen asked him to keep his head down and asked him to set up his capsule for him. Hen entered the game and headed into the Cursed Forest, a scary place where you could be surrounded by monsters if you made any wrong moves. Still, if you weren't a newbie, you'd know how to avoid that and how to deal with them. He thought that for him, with his dragon eye skill, which allowed him to see all the targets in the forest, it was not so bad to be in this place. He was able to clear the forest of all the monsters and increase the rank of the ice arrow skill. Hen was upset that he was only able to defeat 74 out of 1,000 monsters, but he was not discouraged and was going to complete this task as soon as possible. It could not be delayed for long. He wanted to know the details of the weapon. He thought they should have killed over 100 monsters by now, but Lucky's sniff kept distracting him from the task. Lucky smelled the hidden scent again. Hen smiled and said, "Stop finding all these treasures for me." Lucky was able to find black grass that cost $20. Hen started to pick it. He thought that if it went on like this, Lucky would no longer serve him, but he would serve Lucky. But then Lucky suddenly became more aggressive. He noticed something behind the grass. Hen looked and couldn't figure out what was there. It wasn't like he had found a plant or an object. Lucky smelled a man lying near a tree. Hen ran to him and asked him what had happened to him. Hen replied that he wanted to know who was in front of him. Hen replied that he was a traveler from Vega. His name was Midas. Hen assumed he needed help to find a lost MLM stolen item, or an escort to get to the city safely. He knew he hadn't seen it by accident. He added that he would gladly do anything he asked of him, and it was all completely free to him, but Hen knew he could get some kind of reward for his help. The man thanked him for the offer and introduced himself, saying that his name was Yoshi. He was quite embarrassed to ask him, but he wouldn't be able to do it himself, so he wouldn't refuse help. And so he needed his help. Finding 100 cursed zombie skins went on his list of tasks, and as a reward for completing this task, he could get an album of random skill cards. Yoshi watched as Hen was picking black grass. He decided to ask him if he would help him find 100 cursed zombie skins, but Hen cheerfully replied not to worry. He would definitely help him. Hen recalled that when asked how to pump up his hero the fastest, Asmo, the God Wars player, replied that it was much easier than they thought. To pump, your hero had to equip him with unique or legendary things and weapons, Vururujavayam legendary skills, and then would be able to attract monsters 10, 20 levels higher. After that, you just needed to kill them one by one yourself. Then, your hero would become pumped up, and you could try to fight bosses. That's what he was doing now. He was trying to pump his hero as fast as possible. He had already killed about 200 monsters and thought that it was incredible. He was pumping ideally. He approached Lucky and praised him for finding monsters for him so quickly. Now he wanted to take a break and rest, but suddenly, Lucky smelled something again. They ran deep into the forest to see what was hidden from them. They saw that there was a character standing there waiting for them. He told them that when they would fulfill his request, they could find him in the city of Vega. He would be very grateful to them. Hen accepted Jack's request and thought that the Cursed Forest was really not a popular place. He found a lot of rare items and side quests here, and he liked it because it helped him pump his character up faster. He thought it was strange that he didn't meet any new players on the road between the two quests. Even though it wasn't the first city, he didn't understand why no one was hunting in this forest. He thought that the Travelers Guild had a hand in this, and since he hadn't met a single member of the Travelers Guild on the way to this forest, this seemed even more strange to him. But suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by Lucky, who smelled something again. Hen thought he was having a pumping festival. After Hen completed Jack's task, he went to see him in Wig's town. Jack was amazed that he was able to kill so many zombies. Hen received his reward from Jack, and further into town, he leaned over to Lucky and thought his paws must be getting stiff. He offered to open their rewards before they left town. He opened random skill cards and gained the ability to wield the element of fire. This rare skill increased the damage he dealt with any fire magic. Hen looked at Lucky and offered to open the unique reward that Yoshi had given them. He was insanely curious as to what he might have gotten. At his words, Lucky began to bark happily. He opened the reward and started opening cards, after which he decided to leave the game for a while. He met Hyuk-ju, who noticed that he had been playing for a very long time without interruption today. Hyuk-ju noticed that he had played for 4 hours and 44 minutes, but he didn't understand why 444. Because he thought 4 was an unlucky number, he decided to find out if everything was okay with him. Hen replied that he was feeling a little dizzy and asked Hyuk-ju to step back. As soon as Hyuk-ju stepped back, Hen immediately started smiling. He thought he would go crazy with happiness right now. He opened Yoshi's reward and received an unbelievable skill. He couldn't even think that he could get the skill Ballista. When he saw its price, he almost fainted. As the skill name implies, Ballista increases the damage of magical attacks if they are not moving. This skill also reduces the recovery time and the process of using the spell. He thought that standing at the back and keeping his place could have a huge effect, and this skill was very compatible with Dragon Eye and Range Throw. Hen was looking at his page while he was taking a break from the game. He noticed that he had a backlog of private messages. He thought it was because of the video he had uploaded of himself killing an orc assassin. He saw that different channels were writing to him and offering to buy his videos. He thought that there weren't many single murder videos on the vastness of the internet, but there were a lot of people who wanted to buy them. They were offering him what he wanted. Among other messages, he saw a specific offer, but he was indignant that he was offered only $100 for his video. He could not sell his video so cheap, but when he opened the message, he saw that he was wrong, and he was offered not 100 but 10,000. Hen didn't believe the message was real. He thought he was being pranked. However, when he logged into the account, he realized the offer was genuine, and the account was verified. He saw that this offer was sent to him by the channel Rising Star. This channel prioritized quality over quantity, and there were not only great videos but also quite interesting ads. Thanks to this approach to business, they quickly gained new subscribers. In addition, the main theme of the channel was stories about rising stars. Hen thought that if he signed the contract, he wouldn't have to sell the Ballista, but he thought it was uncool to write to them offering to sell his videos. While Hen was considering how to respond to their offer on the canal, the secretary asked the president if he thought the $10,000 offer was too generous. The president asked Secretary Kim where he graduated from. Kim thought he was forever asking that question, but he told him from the Wharton School of Business. He told the secretary that he knew the Archmage's abilities were greatly exaggerated. Personally, he didn't believe that he was so strong that he had killed an orc assassin on his own. President Park Yoon-jun explained that the Archmage had reached such heights with the help of forbidden skills and his divine being. He was sure that the Archmage had poured a lot of money into the game, and he asked if the secretary thought the same. He went on to say that in such a case, he had a question as to why the Archmage was burning through so much money, why he was doing it, and he wanted to know what purpose he was pursuing. Park Yoon-jun said that if he had bought a level-up service from the Travelers Guild, he would have sat back and rested while his levels rose. Still, there was a question about why he went to the deadly risk against the killer orc alone. He asked what his secretary thought about it, but he didn't know the exact answer and was unsure of his thoughts. The president gave him an answer because the Archmage wanted to gain universal fame. The president said that a man so hungry for fame would not miss any opportunity to do so. He remarked that he was buying premium, special offers from a well-known channel of their magnitude. He asked the secretary to tell him how the Archmage might have reacted to their offer, to which the secretary replied that he thought the Archmage would have accepted it. The president then wanted to know what happened after that, but the secretary didn't know the answer. Park Yoon-jun cheerfully replied that they would meet for lunch then, or better yet, they would have something to drink with their acquaintance, and once they got closer, he would present him with his business proposal. He assumed that judging by how much money the Archmage had invested in his character, the guy had to be at least a multimillionaire because no one invested that much money in their characters. The president smiled and said that $10,000 was a small price to pay for the chance to promote their product to the Archmage. He hoped to get even more decadent with it. The secretary informed him that they had received a message from him, to which the president replied that he could guarantee that he would have made up that a company representative was writing for him. Thus, he wanted to give himself importance. Kim replied that he was right, and a letter from a representative had come in. The president smiled and replied that he didn't graduate from the Wharton School of Business for nothing. He asked to read the response he gave them. The secretary said with a smirk that they had written that they would seriously consider the offer. They realized that he was busted, and cooperation was not something they could avoid. The president looked happily at his aide, rose from his chair, and said that now they could begin, and it was time to squeeze everything they could out of him. Hen, in the cursed forest, kept increasing his level, and he also wanted to try out new skills. He attacked the orcs and activated a ballista effect against them, after which the damage from his magic skills increased as long as he didn't move. The system notification informed him that he had hit the target from the maximum distance, thus increasing the attack's damage. Hen was glad that he had such a skill as a ballista. It was easier to kill orcs with it. Hen had completed the requirements of the main quest, cleared the forest, and defeated the zombie orcs so he could begin the next task. He returned to Sakaline's house, where she met him and asked him a question. She wondered what his thoughts were as he fought 1,000 monsters. Hen had told her that the unbearable stench in the suspicious forest was caused by the zombie orc at the altar of the nameless god he had killed, which had given him an interesting thought. He wondered if the cursed forest was under the influence of a nameless god and asked Sakaline about it. She listened to him carefully, bowing her head, said only splendidly, and fell silent. Hen was pleased with himself, he thought. Only a fool could have guessed that. He supposed she would now give him a quest to kill the boss in the cursed forest. But he was in no hurry to say anything, and began to wait to see what she would tell him. Sakhalin said his next assignment was to discover why the forest was cursed. The hen had already guessed this assignment, and she didn't surprise him. He thought that after the quest, she would give him his reward for his hard work in mopping up the monsters. Still, as soon as the system notified him that a new chapter had been created for him, Sakalina turned around and told him to hurry up and complete the quest. Hen rushed to stop her. He didn't understand why she wasn't giving him a reward. He explained to her that he wasn't sure, but he had killed 1,000 zombies. He considered it a lot of hard work for which he wanted to be rewarded. Sakhaline didn't understand what he wanted from her or what he was implying to her. Hen started to get nervous. He thought there had been a system crash and needed to log out and re-enter the game. She turned around and realized he couldn't have done it himself, so she decided to give him a little help and threw him a book. He thanked her and asked Lucky to raise a little to reveal the skill card. He prayed to get something good. He barely opened his eyes to see what card he had gotten, and he saw that he had gotten the skill Lucky Cheat Key. This skill allowed him to use 2 spells at the same time. Hen left the game to get some rest, and Hekju immediately called him. He informed him that people on Gabe were going crazy. Hen asked him why this was happening, and he told him someone had gotten a double skill card. Hekju told him that he knew that such a card had not been on sale for a long time, not a single card, but today it appeared for the first time, which caused a strong reaction from the players. Hen listened to him carefully, and with a smile thought that someone else besides him had apparently gotten one. He looked at the receptionist and asked how much it cost, to which he told him that it was now worth $60,000. He recalled that after the launch of God Wars, the prices of the various in-game items were set relatively quickly, and many varieties of items could be purchased in the game. Skill cards were especially valued because understanding their value without examining each effect was problematic. Still, there were exceptions, such as skills that were obviously good. Hen sat and looked at the prices of the various items in his inventory. He thought that if it was possible to sell the card he had gotten, he would be bogged down in thought for a long time. He went into the messages and saw one thing that was important to him. The secretary stood by the president and asked him if he wanted to send it. The president didn't understand what the secretary was telling him, so the secretary added that he was telling him about the new video contract for the Archmage. He wanted to know if he wanted that particular text sent to him. Did he have a chance to sell them the video of the single murder of the witch doctor Wanderer? They wanted to purchase it for $12,950,000, and the president asked to send it soon. The president sat in his chair and was in a good mood. He asked him what he thought the chances were that the Archmage, with his stats, would have successfully killed the sorcerer. The secretary thought and said that this boss was of a different type and complexity from the killer orc, so he couldn't even guess how their duel would end. He didn't think the Archmage could handle it. The president said they had his personal statistics, and based on them, he wanted to know how the Archmage would have handled their proposal. They were left to guess his decision. The secretary smiled at him and confidently told him the Archmage would accept their offer. Then he would start hunting for items, which was only to their advantage. Park Yoon-jun told the secretary that, according to his calculations, the Archmage was spending at least 50,000 on skills and items. This was huge for other players, so he could easily buy whatever skills and items he wanted. He thought that this might have led to mutually beneficial cooperation between them, which would benefit both parties. The secretary couldn't understand why they indicated the exact amount of $12,950,000, so he asked if it wouldn't be easier to pay $15,000 at once. The president replied that it was not easier. He explained that if you gave $15,000 to someone to whom you had previously offered $10,000, he would start to get cocky. Still, he would think twice if you offered him an uneven amount. Park Yoon-jun explained that the Archmage might think that they were trying their best to get a more significant sum for him, and then he might think that this company was really going out of its way to help him. He noted that it was apparent to him. Hen went into the cursed forest to fulfill a mission he had received from Sakhalin. Before he began his hunt, he equipped himself with an orc assassin set that, due to its price, he couldn't afford before. He had always wanted to own this set, but the price scared him. He knew that the equipment could always be sold anyway, so it was better than buying skill cards. But what frustrated him was that he had bought skills. He didn't want to spend money on them, but now he had lightning discharge and a fire spear. With these skills, he could deal with monsters much faster. Hen hugged Lucky and told him that he had never thought the day would come when he would start spending money on skills. He had never imagined this before. He told Lucky that they had to defeat the monster together, no matter what, because he had spent all the money he XD saved up and had to sell some of the things he didn't use. The hen did so because that letter from the channel meant that they wanted to test him in battle. They gave him a test he needed to pass with flying colors. He realized that they had given him this test to see if the Archmage was worth the investment and if it was worth spending time on him. Hen was sure this was not the last test they had for him. Hen realized that this was his chance to become a star that he had never had before, and he didn't want to miss it. He had to do it and defeat the monster himself. He saw two players standing in the forest waiting for someone. He approached them and asked if they were members of the Travelers Guild. He wanted to know if he had guessed correctly. They saw his divine being and thought he must have been the Archmage everyone was talking about. Still, they knew nothing about him. They didn't expect to see him, and they didn't know what kind of intentions he had. They wondered why he had approached them and asked if something was wrong. But he replied that, on the contrary, he had come to thank them because he was safe thanks to the tireless work of the guild members. They were shocked at what they heard and thought he was joking around with them. They remembered that the guild had told them not to contact him as he could become a VIP, and they didn't want that trouble. Hen reached into his pocket and began to look for something. He told them that he had nothing to thank them for. He handed them vials with unknown contents and asked them to accept them for their labor. They took the vials and asked what was inside. He replied that there was nothing special in there and that he was just giving them a stress-relieving potion since they experienced it every day. Hen told them that he was sure they wanted more coffee, but there was no such thing in the game, so he got them something that resembled the flavor of coffee. They looked at each other and didn't know how to react to his gift. One of them asked if the drink was expensive, but Hen didn't tell them how much it cost. He asked them not to refuse and accept the drink. Hen smiled at them and said he was genuinely grateful they were here, keeping this creepy place safe and orderly. They didn't know they were being watched yet. They saw that the guys from the Travelers Guild were standing there, and there seemed to be a divine being next to them. They realized that the Archmage was standing there talking to him. They noticed that the Archmage was quite friendly to the guys from the Travelers Guild. It was clear that players from the other guild were watching them because those who stood with the Archmage made them feel angry. The two guys watching them thought that the rumor about the Archmage using the guild's VIP services must have been true. Now, they could see how he had managed to gain levels so fast, but if they fought him, they could die. They understood that if they crossed his path, the Travelers Guild could find them and kill them, so it was safer to just retreat and not interfere with their conversation. Hen saw them and thought they were just plain stupid. He was counting on this when he gave them potions in front of everyone to make everyone believe he was with the guild and to make them think he was protected for a while. He realized that they would think that for a week at most until they learned the truth, so he thought it necessary to destroy the sorcerer and complete the channel's mission within that time. In the cursed forest, the players tried to fight the sorcerer, but it wasn't long before they had to run away. They couldn't think that the player who was protecting them would die so quickly, so they had to run away while they were alive. But they could not resist the sorcerer. He was too strong for them, so they could not escape. The magic of the column caught up with them, and he destroyed them. When Hen saw that no one was attacking the monsters, he decided to test his new skills on them. He used his lightning bolt ability and killed 3 orcs that had no chance of surviving. The attack was powerful and effective. He didn't stop and used his fire spear to stab through the monster. He was incredibly fast in defeating all the zombie orcs, and he thought it was worth the investment. He only needed 1 hit to kill them. A system notification told him his mana level was less than 10%. Hen was surprised that it happened so quickly. He stopped to drink a potion that would restore his mana. He didn't know how many more he had to drink. Hen noticed that using the double skill very quickly depleted his mana supply, and then he had to drink a potion to restore it. However, the orcs did not stop and continued to attack him, and he was helped by Lucky, who began to kill them. When Lucky killed the orc, the system notified him that he had reached level 30, and that his health and mana points had been fully restored. Hen began to regret drinking the potion. To level up, Hen received gifts from the Dragon of War, and then Hen thought it was time to reveal a random skill card to cheer himself up before the battle with the sorcerer. He saw that the card was a unique rank, but he didn't think he needed anything else on the warlock. Still, it would be nice to get another attack spell, though he didn't need it. When the map opened, he saw that he had received a strength skill. It allowed him to increase his physical strength in the range of all strength-related skills, but he didn't understand why he needed this skill. He realized that he was simultaneously enhancing both magical and physical skills. He considered this a necessary thing for all battle mages and thought it would be great to use this skill. But Hen wondered if he needed this skill. Suddenly, he remembered the description stating that it allowed him to increase his range, and then he chose a card with this skill. A group of players were hunting orcs to get items and boost their heroes. They had almost cleared the forest of orcs but noticed that there was one more, the last living monster. One of them wanted to know if there were still any orcs in the area, but his co-commander replied that there was no one left in the area. He asked him if he was sure of this because the last time they died because there were so many monsters. The archer replied that he had just checked the area with the Eagle Eye skill and was sure there was only one zombie left in a 50-meter radius. He asked him to relax and kill it. But before he could say anything, a fireball flew into the zombie's head right in front of them. They saw it and tensed up a lot, and they thought no one was around anymore. The archer insisted that no one was within 50 meters. Still, their chief asked him where the fireball came from and added that no one in their group used fire magic. They realized that this attack was over 50 meters away. Hen looked into the distance and thought that he could throw a fireball seemingly 80 meters away, and it hit a zombie. He already thought that the skill he had would be useless, but after using it, he realized that it was very useful. He couldn't believe that the power effect had such an effect on the range of magic use. It meant that it was compatible with both the range skill, the Dragon Eye, and the Ballista. While Hen was thinking about using the power effect, Lucky killed a zombie orc. Then Hen noticed that this effect could increase the combat power of his divine being. He no longer thought this skill was useless. Now, he thought that this skill was drastically changing the entire layout of his powers, and he realized how valuable he had obtained the ability. Hen thought that his range was now 100 meters, and considering Lucky's increased abilities, he suddenly realized that it would be easy to overpower the wandering sorcerer at his current level. A group of players who were hunting monsters were trying to find out who killed their last monster. They were very angry and wanted to deal with him. He caught the player and started to interrogate him roughly. They wanted to know if it was him who killed their monster. But the guy didn't understand what they were telling him. He tried to explain to them that he was only hunting within his zone. The archer asked his fellow owl to stop intimidating passersby. Archer knew that Owl was just wasting his time and that no one in the area was strong enough to kill an orc with a single blow. He wished he would let the poor guy go, but then he noticed something in the bushes and couldn't understand what was going on there. They noticed that the Archmage was going to try and kill a rogue sorcerer on his own. They knew it was the same one who had killed an orc assassin by himself, and since he had been popular on Worst of lately, they rushed out to see it. Hen turned on the video and began to act as if he were broadcasting live. Straight from the scene, he said hello to everyone who was about to look at him and informed them that the Archmage was with them once again. He told them he had come to the Cursed Forest today to defeat the wandering sorcerer. Still, he figured it wouldn't be as much fun if he just killed him, so he decided to kill him without taking any damage. Hen made the first attack with his fire spear and thought the battle was beginning. The sorcerer began to use revitalization magic and raise the dead orcs into battle. Hen pissed him off with his attacks. The wandering sorcerer was about to attack him with his magic staff, but Lucky thwarted him by sinking his teeth into his arm. Hen thought Lucky was doing a good job of helping him by preventing the sorcerer from using magic. He decided not to prolong the battle and activated the double attack effect. He knew he had to use this chance to corner the sorcerer where he could safely finish him off. Hen started combining attacks. He used an ice arrow and an electric shot at the same time, thinking it might help him with the weaker orcs. Now he was thinking about the distance between him and the sorcerer. He calculated that there were about 60 meters between them, and he was going to become a stationary weapon. He wanted to show him fiery, scalding damage, something beyond this level. A group of players were surreptitiously watching the duel. One of them ran out of cover to get a closer look at the Archmage's attack, but his two companions couldn't see what he was doing. He could have declassified them, and then they would be in trouble. He quickly hit again and waited for the Archmage's reaction, but they were lucky, and he didn't notice them. He continued to attack the sorcerer. He saw how strong he was and how much damage he did to the monster. They thought he was just looking for glory. They knew the wandering sorcerer's items were worth a lot, and they couldn't just let them go. They wanted to get them on the sly, striking one last blow at the monster instead of the Archmage. The archer was sure he would have managed to finish him off, but he was only in phase 2. He told his partner that he had a good idea of the time between using the Archmage's skills. Al asked him to be ready when the sorcerer entered phase 3 and started using the zombie summoning. He informed him that this was their only chance to strike the final blow while the Archmage dealt with the zombies. Summoning zombies is a unique skill of the wandering sorcerer, the point of which was that he would summon all the zombies in the area, and the collected zombies would only attack players who dealt damage to the sorcerer. Hen felt that the zombies were on their way and nearby. He realized that the sorcerer had moved to the 3rd phase, and he began to prepare to finish the battle. He figured that he had managed to do more damage than he had expected, which was why he had gotten to phase 3 so quickly, and then he just thought it would be okay to stretch out a bit. Hen turned around and addressed the audience. He asked them all to stretch a little. He felt that the guys who were hiding behind him wanted to steal from him. It was obvious to him. He already knew all their plans, and he couldn't let them steal his loot from him. He had nothing to offer the thieves, who only thought of easy gain. He wasn't going to share with them. Hen finished warming up and thought it was time to show off a special skill he had previously hidden. He wanted to demonstrate his 5th spell to them. The guys hiding behind the trees started laughing at him. They thought he had no idea they were watching him fight and were ready to steal from him. Wool looked at the archer and asked him to get ready to attack. But then they saw something strange and couldn't understand what was going on. They saw that the Archmage abruptly started running at the monster, and he had an axe in his hands. They didn't know what he was up to. Hen began to deal physical damage to him without the help of magic. Seeing this, the thieves couldn't believe that he had just attacked him with his axe. Now they wouldn't be able to slip past him and deliver the final blow. He didn't stop striking more and more blows at the wandering sorcerer. They couldn't understand how he could do so much damage with his axe while being a mage. They couldn't believe their eyes, and eventually, the Archmage was able to kill the sorcerer himself. Hen turned around and asked what the audience thought of his special skill. He used rabies with an axe under the effect of strength, which was why he was able to defeat the monster by himself, and he thanked them for watching. He walked over to where the players were watching him. He said that he would also like to thank the members of the Explorer Guild who had witnessed their fight. He hoped they hadn't been bored. The players who wanted to rob him while sitting in the bushes got really scared when Hen mentioned the guild in his video. They knew that if they were caught, they could get kicked out of the God Wars game. They thought that the Archmage would be alone because he was going to kill the sorcerer himself, but they were wrong. He had the Explorers Guild with him, the archer said. Now it was clear why he went on the attack so calmly. The bandits turned around and rushed away, afraid of being caught. Hen saw this and was glad that his scarecrow trick had worked successfully. They didn't even realize that he had placed the scarecrows around him. Hen returned to Sokolin's house, where she met him and told him that he had finally returned. She had been waiting for him and was not happy that he had been fighting the sorcerer for so long. He sat on the floor, trembling with fear. He was a pagoda, and his scarecrow trick at the end of the battle had worked. The bandits had rushed to escape, but he had defeated them on his own. He had gotten through it. Hen was pleased that he had managed to pull off such an oomph and defeat the sorcerer. Sakadil looked at him and asked if he had done what she had asked. To which Hen positively coveted he had managed to get all she asked of him. He told her he thought the forest was cursed because of the cursed stone he had handed to her. Sokolin accepted the stone and clutched it in his hand. He looked at it carefully and applied his magic to it, which was going to give him more information about it. She looked at him and realized that he had managed to discover the truth, and that was good. Now she could tell him something. She used magic to make a magical staff out of the stone. Sokolin gave him her staff, which had impressive magical power. It was a weapon of unique rank and increased all its characteristics, but the staff could not be sold or traded. She looked at her hand, saying that the shard was rejecting her mana. She asked him if he understood what that meant, and he replied that it meant that the staff had an owner. Sokolin turned to him and said that he was right, which meant he was still connected to the staff's actual owner. She added that now she needed to make a compass for him. She gave him a new task, to go to the mines of Dorito and find the blacksmith Zugu there. Hen listened to her carefully, but didn't understand why he needed to find the blacksmith. The president asked the secretary if he had seen the last sentence from the Archmage. He informed them of the good results, to which he replied that he had seen it but didn't understand its point. Park Yoon-jun replied that it was a test for them. The secretary asked what he meant, and the president asked what was different in today's recording compared to the Killer Orc video. He explained that, first of all, the characteristics of his items had changed, and on top of that, new skills had been added, especially the dual use of spells, which surprised him. The president said the last price on the eBay auction was hundreds of thousands of dollars, until the seller suddenly removed the item from the listing, and the reasons were unknown. He thought the answer was simple. Someone had offered a higher price in a private message and had acquired the skill of dual-use spells, and the secretary couldn't believe it could be an Archmage. The president patted him on the back for his ingenuity and said that the Archmage did not hesitate after their inquiry and boldly invested $100,000 in his pumping. He added that after he pumped, he sent a video of him killing the sorcerer alone, and what he wrote to them in the last part of the letter about how he hoped the video would show good results would be empty words. The secretary replied that it was a warning. If the video quality was not high enough, he would not send them anything else in the future, and there would be no deal between them. The president thought momentarily and asked the aide, the orc killer video they had bought from the Archmage first, to modify it again. Hence, it was of the highest quality. The secretary was surprised to hear the president's request. Still, he told him to improve the video quality many times over while using the money to promote the video. They watched the video of the Archmage again, and the president said that if he was some kind of savage, they should treat him just as savage. Hen arrived at the Dorado mines, which were hunting fields meant for mid-level 40 players. It was a very dangerous place. He knew that since the field monster didn't appear here, the only way to level up was to enter the random dungeon that appeared periodically. It was a system where inept players weren't allowed to form a squad. Time after time, players would have no choice but to be left behind, one by one, and it wouldn't end even if the eliminated players could reassemble into squads. He knew that if a six-man squad found a dungeon that only 5 players could enter, the player with the lowest level or contribution would be eliminated. It was really sad and unfair, but on the other hand, the Dorito mines were the place to find genuine nuggets amongst the many diverse God Wars players. Hen remembered that up until now, he had been the one who would have been expelled from the squad without a second thought. But now the situation had changed, and he was much stronger. He headed to one of the mines to use the cursed stone as material to make a compass. But to do so, he needed the blacksmith Zug. He looked at him and asked him what business he had with him. Hen said he needed to create a compass out of the cursed stone. He added that he had heard that only Zug, the blacksmith, could do it. The blacksmith couldn't believe it was true. The blacksmith said that it was impossible to work with Sakhalin and that this mage had a very nasty temper. He laughed and suggested that he must have been in a lot of trouble. Hen laughed back and said that was not true. But the blacksmith didn't know what he was talking about. He knew her character well, and it was obvious that she would ask for something ridiculous at any opportunity. He wanted to know if he was right. Hen looked at him and realized that they would have worked well together. Hen said that even though it was quite a problem for him, Sakhalin had his own reasons for sending him to the forge to create a compass. The blacksmith looked at him and said that he looked like an adventurer of superior character. If he said such things, he raised his amulet and asked him to look at it. He told him that it was created from a soul metal that could only be obtained in these places. He said that this item reacted to the owner's special magic, which was tied to this locket beforehand. Hen asked if that meant he just had to find the mineral, to which the blacksmith replied that there was no need and that he could do it himself if it could be mined. He looked at him and said that he really liked Zuga, and that for the first time in his life, he wanted to hug the bearded dwarf for being willing to do all his work. The blacksmith replied that it would be great if he could clear the dungeon so he could safely develop the deposits. With a smile, he informed him that there weren't many, only 111 dungeons. When Hen heard the task from the blacksmith, he got a little angry and thought he didn't like him right away. From the moment he heard Zug's strange name, he had no idea what Zug's name could mean. He didn't understand why he couldn't clear 100 dungeons, why he needed 111 dungeons. Hen calmed down and picked himself up. He figured it didn't matter now. He still needed to capture some content. Hen looked at Lucky and saw the exclamation point above him. He was offering him help. He hugged him and said he was happy he had his back. He was going to shut up and just accept the help. But before going to clean up the dungeons, Hen decided to use reinforcement for Lucky. He gave him different potions to increase his strength, health, and speed, so that he couldn't let anything happen to him. Hen looked at Lucky and wondered if those potions would be enough for him. Then he realized he didn't need to take the final blow to evolve. A system notification informed him that he had a quest to hunt alone. He needed to evolve and kill 90 monsters above his level, which he thought was already too much for him. Hen read the notice carefully and thought it was time to use all his skills. If Lucky couldn't participate, he couldn't let him get hurt. They were walking through the dungeon and saw monsters. They couldn't understand how humans could be in their dungeon and started attacking them. Still, Hen didn't have time to react and was the first to attack Lucky, who defeated the monster. When Hen realized that Lucky could also attack and kill monsters, he calmed down and thought that it seemed like he was worrying too much. He looked at Lucky and praised him for killing the monster. He told Lucky that they could now mop up the dungeons, and pretty soon they had 99 kills. Then Lucky gained divine power and his body started to change. He started to evolve. The system prompted him to choose new abilities that Lucky would possess. Hen was surprised that the evolution was complete. He had hoped that something valuable for Lucky had appeared. Hen opened the cards and was insanely happy. He had gotten exactly what he wanted. Lucky now possessed incredible speed. It was a legendary skill that was among the 2 unique skills. He thought he should have renamed it Lucky TV. When they left the dungeon, Hen hugged Lucky. The other players saw this and couldn't understand what was wrong with him or why he hugged this divine being. Once they emerged from the dungeon, they wanted to know what was going on. Hen couldn't believe Lucky was able to kill a monster in just 9 seconds. It was unbelievable. Suddenly, Lucky could smell the scent of the hidden dungeon. Hen thought that he couldn't miss such a chance, so he wanted to sweep the hidden dungeon as well. He happily picked Lucky up in his arms and said that he would help him enter the dungeon. The players were shocked that Hen carried a divine being into the dungeon. This was the first time they had seen such a thing. While Hen was mopping up the hidden dungeon, the secretary approached the president and said that it had been an hour since the updated video was uploaded. He wanted to show him the video so that he could see its quality. The president looked at his nickname and thought it was terrible. He knew Archmages were a rare class, but not so rare that there were only a couple of them, and yet he wondered why he chose that particular nickname. But in any case, he wanted to know what the answer was. He thought that what was done and nothing could be fixed. He looked at the statistics and saw that the speed of gaining views was not bad because the War2V channel was involved. The president told his aide that he thought the Archmage had uploaded the video of the killer orc first to War2V, to which his secretary replied that it was impossible. He asked him if the Archmage had spent his money and time to start the rumor. The departing president replied that it didn't matter how great the man was. Had he ever seen his face on the cover of a famous magazine early in his career? He added that he could have gotten himself into the gossip paper at any time, and then his reputation would have been enhanced by it. They had only to wait and see what would happen next. If that was the case, they could soon expect a similar action. Before he could finish speaking, his employee ran into his office and began frantically calling out to him. He had important information for him. The staff was incredibly excited. They couldn't believe Archmage Asmo had left a comment under the video of the killer orc. He wrote that he had never seen a staff with that design before, and he couldn't believe it himself. Archmage Asmo was a prince of Saudi Arabia and one of the richest people. His fortune was over 1 trillion won. As a club owner and a professional gamer, he spent $1 to become an Archmage. Thus, Asmo became known as the person who spent the most money in this game, which meant that he collected absolutely everything in God Wars and tested various items and skills. In other words, he was making content unpacking items and skills. The secretary couldn't believe that even Asmo himself was seeing this item for the first time. It was something incredible because he had everything he could dream of. The president could not miss this opportunity, so he wanted to send a new proposal to the Archmage. He proposed that he distribute the profits 60 to 40%, with 40% being their shares. The secretary was absolutely shocked. He didn't know how to react to his words. It seemed this offer was too posh for the Archmage, and it could mean they would have nothing left of the profits. The president looked at him and said he would promise him that when they offered him these terms, the Archmage would bring them something interesting, a new item to recoup their costs. After finishing playing and deciding to pause and stretch, Hen stood up from the pod and thought that with a rating like his, he could clear the dungeon in just a second. Hyok-ju ran up to him and told him that he had come at a very good time. To which Hyun replied, "Why did he come to him so late?" He told him that he was able to get out of the capsule by himself. Hyok-ju apologized and said that he had watched the new video. He informed him that there was a new trend right now. Hen smiled and asked which one, to which the employee replied that it was the trend of the death of the killer orc on the Rising Star channel. Ju showed him the phone and said that the views took off and could easily reach 1 million, but that wasn't the most incredible part. Asmo himself left a comment under the video that he had never seen such a picture. Hen thought that was too bad. After all, the staff of the Wandering Sorcerer was the reward he had gotten in the hidden dungeon. He realized that in God Wars, it was only himself who was trying to pass the main quest. He went to the restroom to think about everything and to make sure no one touched him. He started bashing the stall and screaming that he screwed up. He was afraid that everyone might know his secret, that he was on a major quest. Hen was upset that he had left clues to the main quest, but even if that was the case, why did Asmo write about it? Someone had definitely asked him to find out about the item, he thought. He tried to calm down and analyze everything. He needed to figure out what was going on. He assumed there was a group of players trying to complete the main quest. But then he realized something. Now, he was 100% sure that the Rising Star channel would want to make a deal with him. He reached into his pocket to pull out his phone and check for messages from them. He turned on his phone, and as expected, he got a new message from them. He saw that they had offered him 60% of the profits. He exhaled deeply and realized that everything was fine. No one knew about the main quest. Hen calmed down, once again thinking hard about their offer. He thought it was time to do this. They had revealed their cards to him, and now it was time for him to show them his. He went to the game and was sure he could record a lot of quality videos for them. He got to the level 42 Moldog hidden dungeon boss. He could hide in rabbit holes, which made him harder to kill. The hen was going to attack it with the ice arrow skill. He thought that if he were an ordinary player, defeating this boss would be very difficult for him. He realized that fighting him was difficult because, as his name implied, he was constantly moving through rabbit holes, so the pattern of his attacks was impossible to predict. Hen smiled and thought that for him, someone who could see where the boss was preparing his attacks, it was no different from playing catch the mole. He saw which hole he was going to attack from and released an ice arrow into it. He was able to hit it and deal lethal damage. He defeated the mole dog and thus cleared the hidden dungeon, for which he received the title of Mole Dog Killer. Hen decided that it was time to pick up the hidden dungeon card. The card appeared in front of him again, and he had a choice to make. He didn't know whether to choose the chain lightning, the ball prison, or the light shield. The choice was difficult. He chose a light shield that created a barrier of lightning. Hen thought that since he had already learned the attack magic of each element, he didn't know he might need more. A light shield would be a good option for Lucky. Hen thought that the light shield would complement Lucky's other characteristics. He wondered if he should have sought out more skills with improved characteristics. He wanted to see what skills there were for animals, and then he remembered that Lucky had the skill of acceleration. He looked at Lucky, thinking that with that skill, he could try a marathon. Acceleration was a skill that summoned a wind fairy that increased movement speed. Since speed characteristics helped with both attack and defense, it was valuable and expensive. Hen stepped out of the game and came back in a moment later. He held up the acceleration card and couldn't believe he had it. He figured that by selling it, he would have enough for a month of his life. He didn't sell it right away. He kept it as a future investment. He studied the acceleration skill and stroked Lucky, thinking that this was the end of the training for the marathon, and he and Lucky could continue to clear the dungeons of monsters. The system notified him that the dungeon had been taken over by kobold miners. Such dungeons were of low rank, and there was nothing of value there. Such dungeons could be found everywhere in Dorito mines. If you compare them to athletics, they are like running a short distance, which is why many players use them as a location for a marathon. The fastest solo result was 4 minutes and 11 seconds. The record was set by Sasaki Kojiro. He was a sword emperor, Archmage, a legendary rank, and one of the top 10 players. Hen entered his inventory to properly prepare for the marathon. He thought Sasaki had set this record long ago, but no one had broken it yet. He realized that even for him to break this record was almost impossible, but he didn't give up hope and thought it would be nice if he managed to at least get close to it. Hen took the staff and used the strength skill on Lucky, as well as acceleration. After that, Lucky took the black grass concentrate, and his strength increased by 28%. He turned on the tape and greeted all his viewers. He informed them that he was going to try a marathon in the Dorito mines today. However, Lucky would do it alone. He looked at Lucky and told him to get on with it. Lucky was destroying the kobold miners with incredible speed. He activated his light shield, and no one could stop him or damage him. He dealt with all the monsters very quickly. Hen, watching him, told him that he had good speed and good pace, but then he noticed him being attacked by an angry cobalt miner. Hen calmly dodged without striking back. He didn't attack him because he promised not to help Lucky, so he missed that attack, and after a little while, he informed the onlookers, as you'd expect, that Lucky quickly cleared the dungeon of monsters. Hen smiled and said that Lucky had cleared the dungeon much faster than he expected. He paid attention to the timer and couldn't believe that Lucky had managed to set a new record for clearing the dungeon. He realized that the marathon timer hadn't stopped yet, which shocked him. He couldn't believe that his divine being had managed to break a record that had been held for years. Lucky ran a marathon using a fast attack. When using this skill, his entire body took on a golden hue, and his attack and movement speed greatly increased for 5 minutes. Hen left the game and went to the dining room, where he sat silently with his head in his hands. Hyuk-ju came up to him to see how he was feeling, to which Hen replied that he had taken a pill. He said that he had been having a heart problem lately. Hyuk-ju turned around and was about to go to his workplace. He asked Hyun to take care of himself. He realized that if Hyun got sick, then there would be no one to watch over Heron, But Hen didn't reveal the whole truth again. He couldn't believe that he had set a record and that he had a video record. He thought he was lucky that there were fewer monsters than usual. Now he wondered how the channel would react when he saw it. The secretary informed the president that the search queries and subscriber donation statistics were good. Still, he saw something was wrong and asked the president what he was worried about. He replied that he had once again cast the rod. The secretary could not believe he wanted to give another share of the proceeds. He asked him if they wouldn't have suffered a loss while the other party would have benefited. The president repeated to him that he had cast his line and waited. He was afraid that the Archmage might mistakenly think that he was being treated like a fish and take offense at this and stop cooperating with them. He asked him if they had not yet gotten an answer from him, to which the secretary replied that he had given them his answer. The president was now only interested in one question, whether he had taken the bait or not. The secretary informed him that the Archmage had accepted their offer and sent them 2 videos, one on their order and the other more interesting. They thought it was a provocation on his part. After finishing playing and getting up from the pod, Hen noticed that no one was around. He couldn't figure out where everyone had gone, so he figured everyone was in the break room, and he headed over there to check it out. When Hen entered the room, he saw everyone on their phones, watching something very intently. When he got closer, he noticed that they were watching the tape he had sent to the channel. He was insanely happy that they uploaded the video to the Rising Star channel. Immediately after editing it, he watched the faces of those who watched it. They were thrilled with the video and that someone had managed to break the marathon record. Hyok-ju ran up to him and rushed over to show him the new video. Hen said that the Archmage's new video was just tinny. Hen calmly looked at him and didn't understand why he was going so crazy. He didn't understand why he said it was just tinny. He asked him if Asmo had left the comment again, and he was right. Hen laughed and said it couldn't be. Asmo wrote that he had never seen a ring like the Archmage had before. Hen knew he meant Sokolin's ring. He started to panic and didn't understand why Asmo was paying so much attention to him. He thought he was targeting him. Hen thought that his items were making Asmo suspicious. But he soon realized that it wasn't just Asmo who was getting suspicious, but literally all the players. He didn't know what to do next. He realized that if Asmo continued to watch and comment on his videos, many people might soon take notice of him, and then disaster could happen. Hen realized it would not be safe for him to stay in one place right now, so he decided to get back into the game and leave the Dorado mine urgently so that no one could search for him there. He was very worried that he might have been figured out. He asked the receptionist to get his capsule ready. Hyok-ju looked at him and asked if he was really sick. He had no face on him. He asked if he had eaten at all. Hyeon said he was fine and added that he just needed a boost. He asked if Hyok-ju had anything sweet. He said all he had left was grape candy. He was surprised that Hyok-ju still hadn't thrown away those disgusting candies. He explained to him that the main character of the novel he was reading ate those candies while he played. He told him that he even added them to his coffee for himself. After Hen finished listening to him tell him, he climbed into the capsule and logged back into the game. He immediately headed to the mines of Dorito to finish the task as soon as possible. He came to the blacksmith, who had been waiting for him for a long time. He noted that he had done well, and that, thanks to him, he had managed to gather enough soul metal. Hen thought that he simply had no other choice. The blacksmith handed him the pendant and told him that all he had to do now was activate it. Hen took the pendant and said he would activate it immediately and go to Sokolin immediately. Still, she appeared in the mine dungeon before he could finish speaking. She looked at the blacksmith and couldn't understand why he had called her to the mine. He had told her that the pendant was ready and it was time to insert the key, so he had called her. Hen, looking at her, didn't think she would have personally come to the dungeon. Sokolin used magic to stick her hand into one of the walls of the mine. She then used the portal to get the pendant activation key. She wasn't particularly happy to be in a place like this. She took out the key and threw it to the blacksmith, telling him not to do anything stupid. He smilingly replied that he couldn't do anything stupid because they had made a soul contract for it. Sokolin was tired of listening to him, so she asked him to stop the unnecessary talk and continue activating the pendant. She didn't want to linger with him any longer than she had to. Hen realized that they didn't get along after all. He knew there were circumstances under which non-player characters had to cooperate with each other. The blacksmith opened the pendant and placed the stone that Sokolin gave him into it. Hen thought that the main quest of God Wars was to obtain a rank omnipotent, a powerful item that could destroy even a god. And if the game talked about the purpose of non-player characters, it was like they needed to find a weapon against a god and kill it. They couldn't give any more information. The blacksmith finished activating the pendant, which immediately pointed them north. The blacksmith reached out and gave him the pendant. As soon as he received the pendant, the system notified him that he had passed the cursed pendant quest. Hen went through the quest, and for that, he saw that he was promoted 2 levels at once. He also got a rune as a reward, and the Dragon of War gave him a chance to get a random skill. Hen was shocked at the rewards he received. He put off getting the reward until later. He wanted to deal with the cursed pendant. He had learned that the pendant contained a cursed sedge that would sense its master and point the way to him. Hen couldn't believe that a level 40 item could be better than a legendary item. He was confused and wanted to learn more about this item. Sokolin looked displeased and told him to go wherever the pendant pointed him. His assignment was to check what was there. He received a new quest: travel north to the swamp where the pendant pointed him and check out what was hiding there. For this, he could be rewarded with a book of skill cards. When he found out about the reward, he was in absolute shock. He thought he would have done everything he could to complete the mission, but now he needed to calm down or be thrown out of the game. He couldn't get his heart rate back to normal on his own, so he decided to use the best method to calm himself down. He hugged Lucky and began to calm down slowly. He thought that getting a skill card as a reward was incredible. He looked up and saw a notification where the system was asking him to open a card given by the Dragon of War. Opening it, he got the skill of Guardian, which he was madly happy about. It was deep into the night, but the editing staffer was still at work on the Rising Stars channel. He was barely able to leave his office to report to the president that he had finished editing the video. They watched the new video, and the secretary said the swordsman probably never imagined that a divine being would surpass his record, which no one could beat for a long time. The president listened to his aide and, with a smile on his face, asked him how many views the new video had already gotten. The aide replied that it was already around 2 million. He thought that the divine creature that broke the record of that very swordsman alone was the best topic of discussion among all the players. After watching the video, the president said it was very well done despite the rush, to which the director of editing replied that it was a real miracle to make such a video in just 1 day. He pointed out that the Archmage addressed the viewers in his video and said that many were curious about the items he had used earlier. He was preparing a surprise for them that they would enjoy. After watching the video, the president said that it would have gotten 10 million views. He was absolutely sure of this. His staff looked at him and thought he was joking. Hen studied his new skill, Guardian, and realized that this skill could make defeated monsters follow him after killing them. He could revive almost any monster he would beat. It was a special skill that could only be learned by an Archmage. For example, with Asmo's inevitable killing technique, Hen couldn't believe he had gotten this skill. He was thrilled with it. Hen thought that if he mastered it, it might help him complete the quest, but he thought that the skill itself wasn't that convenient. Because the conditions of its use were difficult to fulfill, he knew that monsters with a level much higher than the players couldn't be assigned as keepers. It was also necessary to catch 100 monsters of the chosen type in a limited amount of time. In other words, making a strong monster boss that rarely appeared as his keeper was almost impossible, so he felt this skill was not convenient. Asmo's keeper became so famous because he could use player items, including legendary items. Hen knew that Guardian Asmo had many legendary items, none of which ordinary users could afford due to their price. He figured that if he had a keeper, he could use it as bait for monsters, and Lucky could focus his attacks better. Hen remembered that he had previously considered buying a golem summoning skill to use as bait for monsters. Still, the golem summoning skill was terribly expensive for him. He decided it was time to leave the dungeon, but before he left the mines, he decided to use his speed and strength skills to be ready for anything. He looked at Lucky, and they headed for the exit. They successfully left the dungeon, and they were able to sweep at full speed. They didn't know they were being followed yet, and they couldn't figure out what kind of guy they were spending so much money on following. The players watching them wondered if 3 people were too many to catch one mage. They thought they were too many for him. One of them said they couldn't know what the customer was thinking, and if they were given money, they should just be grateful for it and do their job. He added that the easier the case was, the better it was for them. Suddenly, they saw him running, and they didn't understand why he did that. They wondered what could make an Archmage class player run so fast. They couldn't decide whether it was better to pursue him immediately or discreetly. They had to make the best decision for themselves. But suddenly, they noticed that Hen was looking right at them, and they were shocked that he was able to spot them. They came out of their ambush and ran after him, knowing that they had failed in their tracking. Hen looked at Lucky and stopped him. They didn't need to keep running. They wouldn't catch up. He was sure of it. He was happy with the effect the pendant had given him. It had improved his speed, and now he was even faster. He hid the pendant and thought that with it, he didn't have to worry about the chase. He could easily handle his pursuers. Hen leaned over to pet Lucky for helping him in the dungeon. He wanted to share with him the news that was important to him, that his first video had been put online, and he was incredibly happy. He looked at Lucky and asked if he would change his jacket if the video got 10 million views. Lucky barked happily and said it was time for his next destination. As soon as it hit the net, the video became very popular. People were shocked that the creature had done all the work, while the Archmage folded his arms and stood aside. But they didn't understand why the video was only 5 minutes long. At the end of the video, the Archmage had something for them. He showed them the staff and asked if any of them knew what was in his hand. If anyone knew, he would tell him about all the items. Everyone admired the new video. They thought it was very cool, and they couldn't believe that the Archmage creature was able to break a record that many players had not conquered. He didn't think the Archmage would have responded to the comment left by Asmo under the last video. Plus, there was a subject there again that Asmo didn't know about. The views were just unreal. Everyone started discussing that it was as if Asmo and the Archmage had conspired on purpose to gain views. They thought it was too fake. They didn't believe it. Hyuk-ju looked at him and wondered what Hyuk thought about it if they were on the same page, but he noticed that Hyuk was shaking. He thought he was sick. Hyuk-ju thought he was so jealous of the Archmage that he was twisted all over. He told him he knew he was swamped, but he asked him not to overexert himself. The players gathered around him and said that it was impossible to earn a lot as an ordinary miner. They decided that they should just play on. Hen Yuta restrained himself, thinking that he had already earned a lot. Hen again hid from everyone in the restroom stall, where he decided it was time to spend some money. He wanted to invest in promoting his videos. He figured that if things had gone according to his plan, he would have bought himself a summoning golem because a keeper attracting the enemy's attention wasn't really important to him. The Hen couldn't decide which skill he would instead buy. He couldn't choose because all the enhancements and new spells were so good that his eyes went wild. The thought crossed his mind, check the price of summoning a golem. When he saw the price, he couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't understand why this skill was so cheap. He didn't hesitate to buy, and it didn't matter to him that he already had a keeper. However, the item was already sold out, and he thought he had been cheated and that he had thought too long about the purchase. Channeling the rising star, the secretary informed the president that everything was working exactly as he had envisioned. Still, it was odd that he didn't seem pleased. The president looked at him and replied that the Archmage had only one problem, which was added daily. The secretary didn't understand what he was talking about and thought he was worried about something again. The president asked him what they were doing for the Archmage, to which the aide replied that they were editing the video and uploading it to the channel. But the president knew they weren't the only ones who could do it. He told him that the Archmage was a media mogul writing the script with Asmo, and they were just temporary content providers who could be replaced anytime. The president explained that for the Archmage to want to renew their contract with them, they had to show their good faith, and then the contract would be in their pocket. He smiled and said it was time to let the secret of the Wharton school he had graduated from. The secretary looked at him and asked him what secret he wanted to use, and he told him he tried to bribe him. The swamps were hunting grounds for players above level 50. Located just north of the Dorito mines, they were a place that many players had difficulty in due to the swamp stretching across the map and the shadows of the trees. A group of warriors made their way through the swamps. Still, they couldn't pass because the water usually reached the ankle. In some places, the depth could reach knee level, significantly delaying the players. They could barely move because of the water. They were already exhausted, and they thought even the damned forest was much better than this place. This slowing down, however, also extended to the creatures that were moving through the swamp in hopes of attacking someone, Hen thought to himself. Hen saw that the lizard was about to attack him, so he struck it with a fireball. Because he hit it precisely on target, he could quickly eliminate it, increasing the rank of his skills. He figured that when such creatures were slow, it was easy to finish them off. When he saw a lizard corpse swim up to him, he was afraid it might have soaked his new clothes. Hen noticed that Lucky didn't like being in the water. He approached him and told him that he saw that he was tired. He asked him to rest for a while. He added that as soon as they had completed the quest, they would have left the place immediately. They went a little further and found they needed a lizard's nest, where many lizards lurked and waited for the invaders. There were 1998 lizards there. When Hen saw the number of lizards inside, he couldn't believe he had to kill so many monsters. He was outraged and thought he couldn't kill so many in his whole life. He thought that this dungeon was definitely for team passage, so he decided to increase his strength. He couldn't go in there without preparing. Hen decided that now was a good time to use a keeper. He had successfully defeated 100 lizard warriors and could now summon a lizard warrior as his keeper. He approached the lizard's corpse and used his skill of summoning a guardian to revive it. The lizard immediately bowed to its master. Hen noticed that it had a question mark above its head. He couldn't believe that it had a hidden quest. The system notified him that if the guardian protected his master from ordinary monsters for 33 minutes without running away, his loyalty would increase to level 8, and his physical and combat skills would also increase in rank. The Hen was surprised that the keeper had a loyalty system. If that was the case, he should have used the lizard warrior for his defense, and he began killing other lizards who tried to harm his master. He stood with the fireball in his hand and thought it would take an average of 3 minutes and 33 seconds to catch a lizard. With all the enhancements, he wondered how much stronger the keeper would become if his devotion was increased. Hen decided to approach the keeper and tell him not to attack the enemies this time. He ordered him to just stand and defend himself. He once again remembered the conditions for increasing the lizard's loyalty level. One hidden condition was that one had to defend for more than 33 minutes without killing monsters. Hen thought that if playing as usual definitely failed to realize it, that Archmage, who was famous for being able to learn all kinds of skills, and for him, the keeper was a completely useless skill. He smiled and realized that he might have been the first and only Archmage who could figure out the keeper's loyalty system. While Hen was trying to figure out the system, the guardian protected him for 33 minutes. He fulfilled a hidden condition, reached rank 8, and gained new attacking skills. Hen was surprised that the lizard spoke to him, but it struck him that he had a new skill. Loyalty increased by 1 level, and the lizard already had such a change. Hen was shocked. The lizard walked up to him, kneeled down, and bowed his head. He asked for a name so that he could prove that he was worthy of it in the future. Hen was delighted that he could give him a name, and after a bit of thought, he said that his name was now Gold. The lizard replied that he was deeply moved by his choice and thought the name worthy. The lizard wanted Hen to give him a new order, and then he would prove to him that he was better than his goofy beast, pointing at Lucky. Hen smiled and thought that it was really a friendly dialogue. He realized that if he increased his level of loyalty, he could give different orders to the guardian. He decided he needed to use the lizard for damage. With excellent melee skills as a defender, the lizard stood before him and waited for the order. Hen thought that they now had a squad of 3, each of them having their own role in the team, but Hen still thought about how going on quests would be even easier if he had the golem summoning skill. He regretted not buying a golem when he had the chance. Early in the morning, Heron came running to his uncle's house to wake him up for breakfast, but he didn't want to get up. He said he went to bed late and wanted to sleep, but she kept waking him up. He couldn't stand his niece's onslaught and said that he would get up now. He looked at the nightstand where his phone was and noticed that he had a text message. He was not happy that someone had been disturbing him since morning. He read that the user Rising Star had given him the skill card summoning a golem. Hen quickly got up and was about to go to the game. Heron asked where he was running away without breakfast, to which he said he was in a hurry. While Hen was back in the game to try out a new skill, in one of the buildings, an unknown girl in a red suit watching his video offered to send a mercenary after him. She said that judging from the last video, the odds were higher than expected. She thought there was a chance that the Archmage had the key. The programmer talking to her wanted to know that this was all about an item that even Asmo didn't know about. He wasn't sure if he could access the item, even if the mercenary could kill the Archmage. She looked at him and said that she didn't need to retrieve the item. She only needed to check whether the Archmage had the key to the main quest. The girl continued with a smirk, saying that if he did have the key, she was afraid she would have to catch it and destroy it. She added that if their plan failed, they would lose nothing, to which the programmer replied that it was true, but there would be a player who could take on the task of killing the Archmage. He said that all players knew he was donating to the game, plus there were rumors of him colluding with Asmo, and no player would want to take that risk. The girl said that she would deposit $10,000 for the player. The reward for the Archmage was $100,000, and she knew of one player who could take that risk for that reward. The player who could go to battle with the Archmage was the sharpshooter Lola from the 7 Stars League, and he would agree, but there were other players with the right level. The programmer looked at her a little nervously and said that he would contact the other players and would let her know as soon as they sent in their answers. The girl asked him to write the following. It was a request from Emma, the guild manager of the Abyss Guild. She was sure that after such a message, many people would come to them. The hen couldn't believe that he had gotten the golem summoning skill. He thought that finally, the day had come when he had gotten a unique skill. He fell on his knees and began to thank the director of the Rising Star channel for such a gift. He promised to bow toward the company building every day. Hen thought that if he wanted Rising Star to continue sponsoring him, he needed to show something special, something they didn't expect from him. He supposed that a single kill of the swamp boss, a diamond alligator, might suit them, but he figured that wouldn't be enough. You had to at least break the time record. It wasn't enough for him to do better than the others. But before that, he decided to clean up the lizard's nest. To level up and pump up his character, he summoned a golem, and they proceeded to clean up the nest. Thanks to the secret quest, Hen noticed that his stats were increasing incredibly fast. He was surprised that his power stats were relatively high for a mage. He smiled and thought that, moreover, the indicator of the creature's aggression level was not directed at him, but at the summoning golem, which pleased him. Thanks to this, he could concentrate on his aim and attack enemies even 100 meters away with his fireball skills. Hen thought that, in that case, he would have no problem destroying the diamond alligator alone. He realized the other monsters could cover him. He was happy that they were able to clean up the lizard nest in just 8 hours, that he had the golem summoning skill, and that they had all worked together very quickly and efficiently. The guardian approached him and said his mindless dog kept stealing all his loot. He wanted to deal with Fenrir. Hen looked at them and thought they had started arguing again. While the keeper and Lucky were trying to sort each other out, Hen noticed that his cursed pendant was leading him somewhere, to the place he should have gone. Hen turned around and saw what looked like an egg not far from them. That was where his cursed pendant was pulling him. When they got closer, Hen was shocked to see that it was a dragon egg. When the system notified him that the power of an unnamed god was necessary for the hatching, Hen thought that there might be a new divine beast in the egg. Hen took the egg and thought that he had to finish the quest first. He wanted the reward of the skill book. He turned to Lucky and the Guardian and said that they were now going to Wig's town. They were coming out of the forest and heading towards a small bridge. Hen didn't realize he was being waited on and wanted to deal with it. The assassin knew that no matter how much one hid in the hunting grounds, one would still end up going to the city, and to get back to the first city, they had to go this way. He noticed that he had a divine being and a guardian with him. He thought it was expected from someone whose head they were willing to pay $100,000 for. The assassin used the legendary Wig bow to kill him. The feature of the bow was that after a successful hit, the next arrow could chase the target. He shot and thought he could finish them off quickly. But the Guardian managed to save his master and put up his shield. Hen thought that if he were an ordinary player, he would be very confused after the unexpected attack. He realized that there was no way to guess when and from where to expect the next arrow. The hen was prepared in advance for the assassin's arrival. Knowing that he was being hunted, he purposely provoked his attack. He thought he could have been easy prey for the hunter on the bolt, but he wanted to prove that relying on the terrain alone was useless. The hunter was surprised that he was able to stop the sudden attack. As if he had anticipated it, he pulled out his next arrow and dropped the tracking from it. He took aim and thought, It was a swamp after all. It would take the Archmage at least 30 seconds to get to where he was now. The hunter calculated that he was 120 meters away and that even with magic, it would be difficult to overcome this distance. But then he noticed that a fireball was flying at him. He couldn't believe it, that now he was being attacked. The Archmage's attack went straight to the hunter's head. The impact had critically damaged him, and now he couldn't continue hunting him. The hunter came to his senses, looked at the bridge where the Archmage was standing, and was horrified to find that he had disappeared somewhere. The hunter thought that he had to leave before it was too late. But suddenly he felt that he was being watched from the tall grass. He didn't realize when the Archmage had managed to get close to him, and moments later, he received an ice arrow in his back, taking even more damage. He looked at the Archmage and couldn't understand who he was. He realized that with his level it was impossible to do that much damage. The hunter was already barely moving and wouldn't be able to escape the battlefield. As soon as he tried to get to his feet, Lucky pounced on him and pulled him to the ground. Hen was pleased that he had succeeded. Now, he wanted to check his ID to make sure that he couldn't repeat such a hunt in the future. After checking, Hen was shocked to find that it was Rail AAA-13, a sniper from the 7 Stars League. Hen realized that if he went too far, an entire guild would be against him. He looked at it carefully and thought it was the sharpshooter Lola from the 7 Stars League. They used to hunt together when he played on his old account. Hen knew that everyone only knew about him because of the popular guild. He didn't understand why he needed to use a second account, but realized it was to find him. He realized that if he couldn't take responsibility for killing his character, then, at worst, Hen would make a whole guild of enemies. Hen ordered Lucky to let him go. Then the keeper said that since the hunter dared to put his master in danger, he was going to kill him with his sword. But Hen stopped him too. He thought it was impossible to let him go without some sort of plan. He looked at him and asked if he was from the 7 Stars League because he knew who he was. Hunter replied that he didn't know what he was talking about. Then Hen told him to stop pretending. Hunter knew it was his second account, and he was sure that that character's name was Rail. Hunter was shocked when he realized that he knew everything about him. Hen said it was a big annoyance, and he didn't think there would have been so much trouble if he hadn't informed the drunk that he was hiding his identity. Sniper Lola was amazed to hear that he knew the master of his guild, but he wasn't sure about it. He thought it could hardly be true. He knew that Dione, the guild master of the 7 Stars League, was so dangerous that most players dared not approach him, yet his friends might call him a drunkard. Hen said it didn't matter. He said he hadn't told him his plans yet, but the fact that the sniper was trying to grab him from his backup account could only make the master angry. He wanted to know who gave him the order to catch him. If it was Hen, then he would have relieved him of his work for 80 hours. The sniper thought he was now in trouble, and that he and the master had a close relationship. Hen continued, saying that if that wasn't the case, then maybe he was secretly taking orders from the guild to kill another player to make money. He knew that, according to guild rules, taking orders to kill another player was strictly forbidden. He glared menacingly at the sniper and demanded an answer. Sniper knew that if he reported this to the guild, he would be finished. He stood up, bowed his head, and apologized for the attack. He figured that if the guild found out he had been caught killing another player for money, they would announce that he had broken guild rules and eliminate him. Hen wanted to know what he was trying to accomplish with his apology. He was thinking of finishing him off now so he wouldn't have any more problems with him in the future. But he changed his mind. He said he would have covered for him and wouldn't tell the guild about it. He said he didn't want the league either to find out what he was doing. Hen asked him why he thought he was hiding his main account, using a spare one, and even with the stupid nickname BJ Archmage, the sniper couldn't believe he wouldn't give it out to the guild. He explained to him that he had a big plan. Hen hoped the sniper didn't think he'd thought of anything better to do than plow through the place to raise levels. Hen offered him the following arrangement. The sniper would fail the mission, and he could escape, and then he wouldn't tell anyone about meeting the guild sniper. Sniper was unrealistically happy when Hen offered him this option. He realized that he would continue to live, and the guild wouldn't know anything about it. Hen looked at him with a threatening look to make the sniper realize that if he ever wanted to mess with him again in battle, he would finish him off without a second thought next time. Hen wanted to know what he would offer him in exchange for his life, and what he could give him in exchange for silence. Otherwise, he could just kill him and get all his items. The sniper, bowing his head, wanted to make sure that Hen really wouldn't tell anyone anything. Hen replied that he was a man of his word and wouldn't give away the secret. He thought and decided to give him his bow, the only weapon he could give him, in exchange for the Archmage's silence. He had no other choice. Otherwise, he would be killed by the guild players or the Archmage himself. The sniper apologized again and left. The keeper looked at his master and said that his nobility had taught him much, but suddenly, Hen trembled and fell to the ground. He felt really bad, and his breath was cramping. He couldn't believe that a sniper from the League was able to buy his bluff. The guardian drew his sword and looked around. He didn't understand who dared attack his master, and he was ready to kill him. Sitting on the ground, Hen thought it was good that it was the Seven Stars League. He realized he had been lucky and played up what he had heard of their master Dione. Otherwise, he would not have been able to convince the sniper that he was personally acquainted with the head of their guild. Hen looked at his new item and thought that he already had a powerful bow, which was one of the items in Vig's set. Vig's bow was an item in the Vig's weapon set that could be found in Vig's town. Among all the items in the set, the bow had the best stats, and the minimum cost started at $40,000. Hen wanted to sell it, but then he thought he didn't need the money right now, so he figured why not use the bow himself. He took an arrow and took aim, thinking that if the mage walked around with a bow, he could be killed quickly, but when the mage had a Vig bow, it was a different conversation. Hen thought this bow had an extraordinary skill because of his ability. After every successful hit, the next arrow could chase the target. But he had one problem. He couldn't use a staff and a bow at the same time, and it would be problematic for him to switch from weapon to weapon. He thought about telekinesis, went into his inventory, grabbed Sakhalin's staff, and decided to try using telekinesis to make it easier to change weapons. Hen and his team returned to the first city, where the other players immediately recognized Lucky on the streets. They knew it was the Divine Wolf who had single-handedly broken the swordsman's record. They looked at Lucky and noticed that behind him was BJ, the Archmage. They couldn't believe it was him. It was the first time they had seen BJ, the Archmage, alive, but they couldn't understand what kind of warriors were around him. Hen and his team were walking past the players, with a squad of soldiers walking with them. The players thought they were part of their team, but it was a Vigi guard who was obligated to escort him to the right place. He followed the guards confidently, but inside he was worried a lot. Hen tried not to show it, but his thoughts kept him busy. He didn't understand what was happening, and it made him panic. As soon as he arrived in the city, he was approached by guards and told that Lord Viga was looking for him. Hen couldn't even think why he needed him. He thought it might be related to the main quest. Hen paid attention to the players who were looking at him. He thought he should have turned the situation in his favor. He was the first player to be escorted by the guards of Viga City. He was becoming increasingly curious. He wanted to know what rumors would spread when everyone found out that Lord Wiggy was looking for him right in front of his palace. Hen thought he would find out once he was inside. Hen and his team entered Vigi Manor, where he was greeted by the Lord. He was the governor of this city, and beside him was Sakhalin. Hen didn't understand why she was beside him. Lord Viga came over and said hello to him. He shook his hand and told him that he had heard a lot about him. Hen, looking at him, would never have thought that he would ever be able to meet him in person. As always, a disgruntled Sakhalin looked at him and asked if he had managed to find the very thing he had gone to do the quest for. Hen responded positively by taking it out of his inventory. He pulled out an egg and showed it to her. She couldn't believe he still brought it to her. She pulled out his reward and gave it to him. Hen got a legendary book of skill cards for completing the quest. Sakhalin asked him to give her the egg after he was rewarded for it, but Lord Viga stopped him. Sakhalin turned to him and wanted to know what the problem was. The Lord replied that there was no problem. Then Sakhalin asked why he was interfering in their affairs, to which the Lord replied that it was because there was no problem. Hen stood completely confused and did not know what was going on between them. Lord Viga began to explain to Sakhalin that a guy named Midas had easily found an item that she couldn't find herself. He looked at her and asked if he was right about that, and she confirmed it. Then, he went on to say that there was no need to hire someone else for such a job. Then, when they already had a person in charge, he asked her again if he was right in his reasoning. The Lord turned to him and said he was glad they had found the right man. He added that he appreciated his skills, for which Hen thanked him. He went on to say that this was why he would have preferred that Hen continue exploring this egg. Hen didn't expect that he would have suggested keeping the egg for himself. But he soon realized that Sakhalin wanted to keep the egg and explore it on his own, while Lord Wiga wanted Hen to take it for himself. Hen realized that could only mean that the non-player characters had their own quests. He replied to the Lord that he wouldn't let him down. The Lord was glad to hear it, and he noticed that Sakhalin didn't really trust him. Lord smiled and said they should have checked to see if he could protect that egg. He remembered Hen telling him they came from the swamps, and he had a mission for him. Hen guessed exactly what task the Lord had for him. He realized that he was to kill a diamond alligator. Hen had read that the plan for the raid had been made, so he didn't see any problems. A system notification appeared in front of him, which stated a secret condition when killing alone. For destroying the monster, he could get a white wig staff as a reward. Hen was shocked when he realized that he could get not just a staff, but a white staff of Viga. The Lord smiled and asked him if he would take on the task. Hen said with full confidence that they could rely on him. Before he left his manor, Hen decided to open the skill card book. He badly wanted to get the mana recovery skill. He needed it. He was dealt a dragon mana card. This skill could awaken the power of a dragon fueled by mana from the surrounding nature, thus allowing him to restore his mana supply. Hen was about to leave, but he was stopped by Lucky. He saw that he had dropped another skill, Dragon Fever. It was a reinforcement skill, also known as Dragon Fever. Hen realized that this skill was never sold on Gubei. The reason the skill that fell out to him became known as $1,000,000 is Asmo. He once said he would give $1 million to someone who would get him that skill. Hen realized that although Asmo had said so, no one knew whether he had eventually bought the skill or obtained it in some other way. It wasn't known to anyone. But later, Dragon Fever was considered one of the best skills associated with Asmo, and everyone wanted a $1 million reward. Hen thought it was a short-lived but powerful skill made for boss raids, but it had one downside. It required a large supply of mana. He was insanely happy. It was what he wanted. He wouldn't have been able to afford it even if he had sold his house, so it was a huge deal for him. Hyun exited the game, and Hyokju ran up to him and asked him if he knew what quest the Archmage was on now. He was very excited, so Hyokju asked him not to be surprised too much. Hekju informed him that this time the Archmage would take over the city of Vigi and become its viceroy. Hen smiled and thought it was just a rumor. He said this information was from a reliable source and asked him not to tell anyone about it. Hen realized it was better to let people like Hyokju spread these rumors. Hen looked at him and confidently stated that, of course, he wouldn't tell anyone about this. Hen didn't want to take the conversation any further and asked to be immersed in the game. He realized that the problem wasn't those who spoke but those who acted. He was beginning to be stalked by strange people willing to hire even Sniper Lola to kill him. When Hen returned to the swamp to fight the monster, he realized that killing the diamond alligator alone would be impossible. He sat in the capsule and thought that there was only one thing he could do in such a situation. At that time on the channel, the secretary was surprised that the president had sent him 2 magic skills again, not counting the golem sent last time. He thought it was just the usual sucking up to the Archmage. The president stopped, turned around, and calmly asked who the secretary meant by sucking up to the Archmage, the secretary unafraid to answer that he was talking about him. He did not deny the secretary, who was shocked at the reaction to his words. The president smiled and replied that the difference between investing and sucking up was one piece of paper. The secretary didn't understand what the president wanted to accomplish. He told him that the Archmage was a really important figure to them, and that was a fact, but he didn't think such a person could care about a small bribe. Then the president decided to fill him in on the details of his scenario so he would stop pestering him with questions. He said that now the Archmage was preparing something grand, but no one knew what it was. The secretary replied that the last place he had been seen was the marshes. He could not believe that he was going to defeat the master of those marshes. After listening to him, the president asked how the Archmage was going to do it. He assumed that the Archmage would have sent them, as usual, a video of their battle after the battle with the Swamp Master. Still, the president replied with a smile that he hadn't thought right this time. The president turned to him and said confidently that it would now be 100% live because he had done everything in his power to make it so. Suddenly, a channel employee intervened in their conversation and informed the director that the Archmage had emailed them, asking if they could have a live broadcast from their channel. He looked at the secretary and smiled, saying that this was exactly what he had been waiting for. They went into the office to the other staff and told them all to get ready quickly for the live broadcast. Hen went into the messages and saw that he had been sent 2 new skills. He could not believe that he had been sent such expensive skills for nothing. They obviously needed something in return. He had no doubt that the Rising Star channel supported him as the most anticipated contestant. Hen decided it was time to prepare for the event. Hen knew that live streaming or broadcasting had been the most popular content, bringing in a lot of money and fame from the first release of God Wars until today. As soon as the stream started, players ran to the scene like a pack of wild dogs and tried to interfere with it in every possible way. So the bosses were usually outside the live broadcast. This is how they acted towards everyone except Guild 10. They organized public executions in front of thousands of viewers for the stupid insolents who killed players while they were streaming. As soon as he came to the swamps, Hen noticed that 3 players were following him. He understood why they were coming to these places, and he could see their nicknames, so he was calm. In case they attacked, he would have time to react. He knew that many players, including these 3, were just eager for him to die, so he decided to do something for them. He thought that they were very clumsily waiting for him, which was funny to him. He was going to show them that they had chosen to follow him for nothing. He had another 30 minutes before the diamond alligator appeared, so he decided to prepare for the broadcast. He knew that all God Wars video content could only be posted through the Wars tube. Most players didn't mind it, but not because they loved the game. The main reason was that it was easy and comfortable to broadcast on the Wars tube. Hen knew that God Wars and Wars tube worked closely together, so the stream could be started with just a couple of clicks. He entered the live stream activation code and gained access to the Rising Star channel. He started preparing for the broadcast and noticed that the chat room was already loaded with only 3 people: him, the chat manager, and one unknown person who asked him to concentrate on the game. He would take care of the rest. Hen couldn't figure out who was happy to have their first dialogue between them, but he soon texted him that the channel director had spoken to him. He was shocked that the director himself spoke to him. He texted him that he could start the broadcast as soon as he was ready. Hen thanked him and started the broadcast. Hen started the stream and the countdown began. While he waited, an interest awoke in him. He was curious how many people would come to his stream. He realized that he already had several videos with millions of views and was sure he had gained some popularity, so he figured at least 1,000 people would have come to the stream. But as soon as he started the stream, the people who wanted to watch reached 1,000 people. Everyone had been waiting for a stream from him for a long time. Hen couldn't believe he had gained 1,000 viewers so quickly. He needed to calm down. He thought he shouldn't have gotten cocky before the fight. Hen welcomed all the viewers of his stream and introduced himself to them. He was happy to hold this stream, especially for them. He was also ready to start the fight with the diamond alligator, which was going to appear very soon. He thought that this battle would not be as fun as this stream. He turned to the audience and said that the last record of a team of 4 was 10 minutes and 32 seconds, and especially for them, he would try to break that record.